All right, we are live. Okay. Good morning.
No camera?
No camera? It's because we're on the wrong.
That's class 6.
All right, let me set.
What's going on today?
Because when they update, that's why I was
Yes, why we're trying to avoid updates.
Right.
It messes with the computer settings.
messes with
I get that.
everything. Everything.
Here.
And
Technical difficulties. Please bear with us. Now go.
okay. Good. Okay. All right, guys, if you're tuning in live, we are having some technical difficulties. Can you let me know in the chat if you can hear me? I know you can see me now. Hi, but can you hear me? All right. And we have a couple of people that look like they are attending virtually today. Okay, you guys had chapter 7 between last class and this class. Does anybody have any questions on chapter 7? No?
We have good audio.
Okay, good. Okay, Candy, how'd you do?
Good, 0-1.
Good. And Amaris?
Yep.
Oh, look at that. Yay. Okay.
Yeah, I did good. 0-1.
0-1. Okay, and Alyssa?
0-1.
3 for 3. Look at that. Awesome. All right, since we have a small class today, I want to get on my soapbox for a minute. So bear with me. This has nothing to do with instruction. We're going to get back to instruction in just a minute. But I want to talk about some recent events and how they're going to impact you. There was a patient that was Baker acted. That's when you are held by law enforcement because you're a danger to yourself or others. And you're going to be transferred to a mental health facility for a mandatory hold. But a lot of Baker Act patients end up in the hospital first for stabilization. Well, down south, and south of us, there was a Baker Act patient that was put on a med-surg floor, just a basic general medical floor, not in a psych unit. And wasn't there, that I know of, wasn't there for medical reasons. He was there because of the Baker Act. Now, I don't know anything about his particular situation. I'm not violating HIPAA or anything like that, but I'm not real sure why he was on this particular floor and not in a locked unit. Good morning. He brutally attacked a nurse and broke, literally, I'm not exaggerating, every bone in her face. She has lost vision. It is an absolutely brutal situation. It is horrible. She did survive. She has a very long recovery and most likely is losing vision or losing her eyes, actually. Her daughter is a physician, and her daughter is reaching out to healthcare influencers and saying, we need to talk about this. This is unacceptable. Now, if this had been an isolated incident, it probably wouldn't get much coverage, but it is just one of an estimated 20 workplace violence encounters in United States healthcare this week. That's unacceptable. It is absolutely unacceptable. Administration's response to this is sickening. Absolutely sickening. I can't even begin to explain my rage at this moment. Her coworkers tried to have a vigil for her and was told they could not do that on campus. This is one of their employees that got hurt on the job, and the coworkers were told you can't do that here. That is absolutely unacceptable. This is, I'm not going to say the name of the hospital, but one of the largest, if not the largest, hospital corporations in America. And they are taking zero action to prevent this from happening to anyone else. Now, why is this relevant to you guys? Because just 2 weeks ago, I told you guys that you were eligible to be sitters at the bedside right now. And I told you to apply for patient safety attendant. Do you know Who would have been at that bedside? The patient safety attendant. Do you know who would have been beaten? Absolutely. Absolutely. This is relevant to you. And the most at-risk population for violence, we're putting the lowest paid, untrained individuals at the bedside and crossing our fingers and hoping that it all goes okay. The only reason that this was made public, the only reason, is because her daughter is forcing it out in the open and has the ability to do so. The problem is that the people that work, that rely on that hospital for a paycheck can't speak out because they have bills. They have to protect their job. So it's up to us that's in the influencer sphere to stand up and say, this is not acceptable. And that's why I'm taking the very beginning of this lesson to say, this is not acceptable. Period. What's even worse, that's bad enough. What's even worse is the hospital administrator, when calling 911, said, my employee was beaten unconscious, but that doesn't matter. That's not why I'm calling. I'm concerned about the Baker Act patient. She is probably going to die. That is the transcript from the 911 call from the administrator at this hospital regarding one of their employees. Why OSHA isn't involved in this, I don't know. Occupational safety and health. OSHA should be front and center, and they're not. So it's up to us to make sure that we have a safe workplace. So for those of you who are going to interview for jobs, this needs to be a question. In light of recent events, what steps is your organization taking to ensure my safety? And until that starts coming up and they realize that they can't fill positions because they aren't ensuring your safety, nothing's going to get done. But make no mistake, this could have been any one of you. Could have been.
Was this recently or?
This is this week. Yeah. It's unacceptable. Completely. And the fact that the administrator wasn't concerned about their own staff members and was and told the facility, the employees that they can't have a vigil for their coworkers. I've got some very strong held opinions on this, and I would have voiced them had I been there. Loudly. Unacceptable. Support your employees or you won't have it. It's that simple. The CEO of this particular organization made $21 million last year. $21 million, one person, $21 million last year, and they don't have money for basic security measures. There are no metal detectors to prevent and a few years ago, by the way, another incident happened at the same hospital where an employee was slashed. That was the corporate terminology. The employees are being told that they cannot talk about this. They cannot talk about this. Crime was committed. They can't talk about it. But they're afraid for their jobs. I don't blame them. So we're going to talk about it. Understand that this could affect you. And as long as patients are told that they can get away with this type of behavior and there are no consequences to it,
Is the hospital being shut down
No.
for this?
No, in fact, the Agency for Healthcare Administration, which oversees all organizations in Florida, all healthcare organizations in Florida, came in yesterday and did an audit and said, no, policies need to change. No policies. You have got a patient or a employee in ICU, but no policies need to change. So what does that tell us? It tells us that they aren't going to do anything to secure your safety in the workplace. No policies need to change.
So they want their employees to keep getting hurt and hurt
Yeah.
and hurt and hurt.
They don't care. Employees are expendable. That's a problem. So for those of you who want to work at a hospital, I need you to understand this. When somebody comes into the hospital, you do not know their psych history. You do not know their current state of mind. You have zero information on this guy. And he could have been there for a gallbladder issue. I don't know. Nothing, I do know he was Baker acted, but he could have just been there for just a regular, normal thing, but had a psych issue. You don't check your psych issues at the door.
Was he a Baker Act patient before the incident?
Yes, he was there for a Baker Act stabilization before they shipped him off to mental health.
So
they knew.
There's supposed to be an officer there with him for some Baker Act places.
Yeah, no,
Have
they-
hospitals.
They think it's okay to have a sitter, somebody untrained, somebody that weighs 95 pounds at the bedside. Long-term care guys may not be where you want to be, but at least we know the patients. Take from that what you will. But do better. I am so mad at this organization. And I used to be an employee of that organization. I used to be an educational partner of that organization. And had I not severed that already, I would be severing it to make a stand. Unacceptable. I am training you to do the right things with the patients. And this in no way affects how we are going to treat our patients. But we need support from management in order to do that. Please be careful. But that also brings up something that is very relevant to us. When that nurse was in that room, if you go see the pictures, and it's really easy to find, just look up
saw on Safari.
Justice for Leela. Justice for Leela. This, the hospital said, took mere seconds. When you look at her, it is not, that beating did not take mere seconds. That means she was in that room, people. She was in that room being savagely beaten, and other staff members were on the floor and may have heard her, but were so busy taking care of their patients that they didn't stop to look. When you hear something, if a call light is going off, we have to answer it, whether it's yours or not. If somebody is yelling for help, you need to answer that call. Because apparently security isn't going to be there for you.
I used to hate that feeling that the work field. Well, it's not my patient. It's not my call.
Yeah.
Like, how dare you?
Yeah, they're all of our patients.
How dare you?
That is absolutely sickening. And I stand with this nurse, and I stand with her family. 100%. Absolutely unacceptable. $21 million this man made in 1 year. 1 year. One. And they don't have money for basic security measures. I'll tell you what, if that CEO had been attacked in his office, they would suddenly find money for basic security measures in the administrative wing.
That big dude? That's that little lady?
Yep.
That guy looks scary.
Yep. Do better.
When it comes to things
Yeah.
like this, is there anything in place to protect us, or do we literally have to sit there and take it?
The official line, what I'm supposed to teach you, is that you evade.
But
Okay?
if that's not possible.
So if I've got somebody who's swinging at me, I need to step back. I need to evade. When you got this guy who's holding you down,
Yeah.
just, going to town, there's no way to evade. How do you evade? He's holding her down. He's very big. Yeah. Yeah, how nobody realized that this guy would be a threat to to just med-surg nurses. I don't get it.
I don't think the picture I'm seeing right now, that didn't take seconds.
No, it did not take seconds. It did not take seconds. Yep. So anyway, I'm off of my soapbox here, but you guys need to be aware that administration is clearly not going to back you in a hospital setting, particularly this corporation's hospital settings.
It says that investigators told them there's no cameras in the hospital room either.
That is correct. And that's because of patient privacy concerns. There's no hospitals, or there's no cameras. I believe that policy should change with Baker Acts, for sure. But yes, no changes are going to be made.
The stabbing happened at the same hospital. too.
Yes, it did. Yes, it did. Now, why is this relevant? Because 2 of our major hospitals are owned by the same corporation
Mhm.
in our community. Take from that what you will. System is very broken. And nobody's going to be out there for you. So I think we should talk about it. Be there for your coworkers, guys. Support each other. We need to get past this you versus me mentality, because there's nobody on your side. Nobody. We need to be on each other's sides. Just be careful. Long-term care may be a slightly safer option at the moment, but I'll tell you what, if I were out there looking for a job right now, that would be my number one question with every employer. What steps are you taking in light of recent events to protect me in this workplace? It's a valid question. And she is losing her sight. She is losing her independence. She is losing her ability to make money. She is facing multiple surgeries over the rest of her life. She is losing. Do you really think that they're going to step up and take care of her? Do you really think that that's going to happen? They don't care about you. Something has to change. This is very personal, very personal. So, how do we know what to do with each patient? We follow the care plan, the whole care plan, and nothing but the care plan. While we are doing that, we're going to make observations, and we'll report those to the nurse. Every skill starts with an opening. Every opening starts with a knock. We're going to greet our resident, address them by name, describe the skill, obtain permission, close our curtain, wash our hands, get our supplies. Remember, don't touch your patient until your hands are clean. I worked, from the time I left here on Monday until 9 o'clock last night, I worked on the partial bed bath video because I wanted to get it done for you guys so badly. And I needed about another hour to finish it up. So it will be posted later today. I'm going to show you the old video in class today, but you can go back and watch the new one that has the checkpoints on the bottom. And that's one of the checkpoints. Don't touch patient until hands are clean. And I think that if you see it in writing while I'm performing the skill, it connects those dots a little bit better. And that's why I really like this new format, but unfortunately I can't show it to you.
When we're greeting, we don't need to check wristbands anymore, right?
No, and so let's talk about that really quickly. For the test, there is no wristbands because you guys are all the patient. So there's no wristbands. And they're not going to have you simulate that. Now, the thing is, and this is what most people don't understand, wristbands are very rare, actually. The majority of healthcare happens outside of a hospital.
The only place I've seen that there's wristbands is the children's hospital. They have wristbands and
Right. So in hospitals or what we call acute care settings, short-term stays where we don't know the patients, you're going to see wristbands to identify those patients. The best way to identify a patient, though, is verbally, because wristbands can be wrong. Absolutely, 100%. So verbally is always, always best. Now with children, a lot of times children can't verbally, tell you who they are or respond to their name. So wristbands are important with children, but there's usually a double check system to make sure we have the right wristband on the right patient. But we don't use wristbands where the patient lives. It's like when you go home at the end of the day and you walk into your house, you don't get a wristband so everybody there knows who you are. You belong there. You live there. Everybody there should know who you are. You live there. Well, patients are the same way. In assisted living facilities, you're not going to have wristbands. In nursing homes, you're not going to have wristbands. This is where the patient lives. Mm-hmm. So the majority of healthcare actually occurs outside of acute care, which is why it's not a testing standard.
That's what I meant by question. So literally, we don't need to address it.
No.
We don't have to ask them.
No, you don't have to say, can I see your wristband
Or
for the test?
are you who you are?
Right.
Okay.
You're just going to address them by name. Hi, Mrs. Jones.
Okay.
Now, that will change depending on the patient that we're working with. So the care plan may have us identify our patient in some other way. For instance, if we have a Baker-acted patient who is having an active psychotic episode, we can't rely on them to give us their name. So in that situation, a name band may need to be used. Make sense? Mm-hmm. Or some other secondary form of identification. We're not going to use gloves with everything, but we are going to use them if we might possibly touch body fluids, personal skin, or non-intact skin. And if we are wearing them, the first thing our gloves should touch is the patient. Keep your gloves clean for the patient. Once you've touched the patient, we have to be aware of what we're touching in the environment to make sure we're not cross-contaminating, and then we'll remove those gloves correctly. We're going to use a barrier anytime we use supplies. It gives us a clean place to put our clean supplies. We only touch supplies with clean hands. We don't hold them against our uniform, and we're going to get that barrier first before. Privacy blanket used anytime a patient is uncovered or undressed. We're going to pull that sheet down under the blanket so the patient is never uncovered. We're not going to snap or shake that blanket when we put it on, and we'll remove it at the end of the skill after removing our gloves. Linen rolls, these are all repeats. Linens can't touch your uniform. You have to have clean hands to get your linens, and don't snap or shake them. Clean rolls toward you, dirty rolls away. Don't let anything touch the floor, and anything you don't use has to be discarded. Patients always have to be in the middle of the bed, so we'll have them scoot toward us and roll them on their side, facing away from you, so that they're on their side in the middle of the bed. Washing rolls. We're going to get into this again today. We learned washing rolls earlier with hand and nail care and foot care and partial bed bath. Today, we're gonna apply them to Peri-care. Basins are no soap zones. We use a paper towel to turn the faucet on. We check the water, they check the water. We use the leaves method for any wet body openings. Whatever we wash, we rinse. Whatever we rinse, we dry. Change the water if it gets cold or soapy. Don't get the surface wet. Now, for the skill that we're going to learn today, bed bath, the surface is our bed. So we have to put a towel under where we're washing to keep those sheets dry. If the sheets get wet during the exam, don't ignore it. That evaluator did see that. And you wouldn't want to leave a patient on wet sheets. So you're going to address it. You don't have to change a sheet. You just say, I would change the sheet. It got wet. Good. If we put lotion on, we warm it up first. We wipe off the excess. All basins are cleaned the same way. You dump it, you rinse it, you set it down, pick it up with a paper towel, dry the inside, dry the outside, and put it away in the drawer with the paper towel. Shoe rules. The patient's feet hit the floor. We got to talk about their shoes. Slipper socks are not enough. Feet must be flat on the floor. And we're going to count to 3 before we lift them. Once we've got them standing, we'll ask if they're weak or dizzy, ask if they're okay before we start walking. And when we return them to the chair, they have to feel that chair behind them. We're going to use proper body mechanics when we lift them, and all skills in the same way. They need to be in a clean and safe environment, bed in the low position. We're going to ask about comfort, address preferences, ensure they're covered with something, clothes, sheet. Don't want to see those knobby knees. Open the privacy curtain, give them their call light. I don't care how you do all those steps, just do them. Once we've opened the curtain and given them the call light, then we're going to wash our hands, document if needed, and wash our hands again because we must end skill with clean hands. Oh, I'm not going to go over all these. You guys all know them. All right, so we're going to go to page 72. Transfer from bed to wheelchair. Hey, Jake, can you get the wheelchair for me out of the back?
Yes, ma'am.
Miss Patty, I did get a email from the metric last night. It says
Awesome.
that my thing was approved and they will email me in 2 to 3 days when my testing date was.
Wow, that was quick.
Yeah, and literally because I submitted it last night, like around 4 p.m. and I got the email around 10 p.m. last night.
Wow, that was really quick. That's good. They're speeding up a little bit.
She's barely gonna fit.
Thank you. Okay. All right, so we're going to talk about wheelchairs. This particular skill is going to be transferring a patient from a bed to a wheelchair, but a lot of what we learned with ambulate is going to apply to this skill. With ambulate, we made sure they had shoes on and their feet were flat on the floor. We used that 1 foot in front, 1 foot beside, their hands on your shoulders. We learned how to put a gait belt on and make sure it's snug enough. We're going to count to 3 and lift them. All of that is exactly the same. With ambulate, we counted 3, we lifted them, we asked if they're okay, and then we went for a walk. This skill is different. We're going to get to the care plan in just a minute with what happens after we lift them. That's where the skill is going to change.
Do they have, okay, so I know every work environment is different. When I went to work with my mom as a volunteer, I've seen patients in a wheelchair in socks or slippers. Can they do that if they have their shoes with them and they just say they were taking them to the cafeteria to get the little food? Can they put their...
So how do I put this? Okay. I am teaching you what should be done.
Okay.
It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be done in every setting. So I want to be careful with how I say that. Okay. It is best practice to have shoes on the patient anytime they're out of bed, particularly with their feet on the floor. In order to get a patient into a wheelchair, their feet have to be on the floor because we're pivoting them. And what happens if there's something sharp on the floor, or if their feet hit the wheelchair on the way?
Yeah.
The risk of injury there is pretty high. So that those shoes just add that layer of safety.
Mhm.
So they should have shoes on.
Okay.
That doesn't mean that everybody's going to, to do that step. I'm going to tell you that as a nurse, when I was in clinical nursing, when I was out there working, we didn't put shoes on anybody.
Yeah.
Everybody was walking around in those slipper socks. Nobody had shoes on. It wasn't until I started teaching that I realized, when I started looking at the checkpoints, I'm like, well, wait a minute, why? Because in my clinical practice, we never put shoes on anybody. So I started checking into this, and I looked into the safety standards and the rate of injury and all of this back work so that I could form these things to bring them to you. So I don't explain to you all the research that was done to get to here. But as a nurse, I wasn't aware of any of that. Slipper socks in a clinical setting are one of the most common ways that pathogens are spread. Because you walk around in those slipper socks and then you get back into bed with them.
Mm-hmm.
And any pathogens you came into contact with are in bed with you. And if you've got a surgical incision, those pathogens have a warm, dark, moist place to land. So it's not good practice. Now, as a nurse, I didn't know that. Had no idea. So I was the nurse that let people walk around. The majority of nurses that you are going to be working with out there, let people walk because they don't know any better yet. Nobody's made them stop and think, hey, that floor, you really want the patient walking on that floor and then getting back into bed with those socks on? You say that to a nurse and they're going to go, oh my gosh, I never thought about it. We don't always know the effect of the actions that we're taking because they're just actions that we take. We don't stop and think about them. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So understand that your nurse may not know that that is an important safety concern. They may not stop to think about it. And I would say that's probably the case where you were volunteering, is the nurse just didn't know, just didn't think about it. I was never taught that in nursing school. You're only as good as, what you're taught. And nobody's going to teach you 100%. There's going to be gaps. Either because I didn't know and couldn't pass it on, or I knew but didn't have time to pass it on, or I passed it on and you zoned out, or I passed it on and you weren't even here. Right? There's always gaps. So it's just as simple as saying, yeah, that floor, lots of pathogens. I don't want the patient walking on those and then bringing those pathogens back into bed with them. And the nurse will probably go, get really wide-eyed and go, oh my gosh, I never thought about it.
What about when you have some people, like I'm one of them myself, I hate wearing shoes.
Mm-hmm. I do too.
What do you do when you have a patient that will not put shoes on?
So it's actually very simple. We do listen to our patients, right? So if I've got a patient that does not want shoes on for whatever reason, and sometimes this happens because the feet swell and their shoes don't fit well, or they have foot pain, or there's a million reasons why people, or I just don't like shoes. That's fine too. But if I come across that, it's really easy. Do you know how many pathogens are on that floor? You want those pathogens on your socks or the bottom of your shoes? If you say that, patients are pretty reasonable for the most part, even though it might be a little uncomfortable, they're going to get it. Yeah, I put some shoes on me. Because they know that the shoes go off before they get back into bed. So a little bit of education here can go a long way with our patients. But if I have non-compliant patients that just don't want shoes on, no problem. I'm going to get them out of bed, get them in the wheelchair, take them for a walk, whatever they need without shoes. Let the nurse know, obviously. But when they go to get back into bed, do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to change their socks. Yeah. I'm going to do what I can to keep them safe. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And then you got people like me that don't like socks either. I don't like socks on bed.
Mhm.
But that's okay. I can take them off. No problem. But yeah, it's, again, a little education goes a long way. Okay. All right, so not a whole lot to learn here. We have our principles going down the side here. You see them all spelled out here, and we know all of them. There's nothing here that's unusual for you. Down here is going to be test-specific information. Somebody with your level of experience should be able to do this in 11 minutes or less. Guys, you're getting somebody out of bed and into a wheelchair, and they're giving you 11 minutes to do that. Does not take 11 minutes. Live testing students, we're going to get to that in just a minute, and they will be positioned in bed for this skill. So let's talk about test or skill-specific items that relate to this particular skill. So up at the top of the page here on page 73, you see the care plan. And the care plan tells us to transfer the resident from bed into the wheelchair. The resident is unable to walk or take steps. Highlight that, underline it, do something to draw your attention to it. It says that they cannot take steps. So if you don't get the wheelchair close enough and this patient has to take a step, you've gone against the care plan. So do you see down here how close that wheelchair is to that patient? It is almost touching that patient. That's too far away. That wheelchair actually needs to be just a little bit closer so it's almost right up against that leg. If you try to take this patient, stand them up and pivot them, the edge of that wheelchair is not going to be against the back of their legs. Now remember, that was a principle we had to learn, that the patient has to feel the chair behind them before we help them sit. That is too far away. You see how close that is?
Mm-hmm.
And it is still too far away. Good? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That is one of the biggest checkpoints for this particular skill because our care plan says they can't take steps. But they can't stand with support, so you're not going to be bearing the entire weight of this individual. They can stand with support, they just cannot take steps. A gait belt or transfer belt is required to transfer the resident, and the resident's going to stay in the room. Let's talk about that for a second. Let's say I put a patient in, let's say I put this patient in this wheelchair. Okay. If I end the skill there, what is that patient staring at?
The wall.
The wall. Do you think your patient wants to stare at the wall?
No.
So for this skill, when you get a patient into a wheelchair, you really need to spin that wheelchair around so that they are looking at society. You guys see the difference there? Years ago, not so much with you guys, with the newer generation, but years ago, a common punishment for kids was to put them in the corner and have them stare at the wall. So when you have a wheelchair staring at a wall and you got an older individual in that wheelchair, psychologically, they're being punished. You guys see how that could be bad?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the resident will stay in the room. What they're not telling you is turn the wheelchair around. Because they're checking to see, are you going to put that together? Okay. All right, so step-by-step instructions are listed here. Bold, the patient cannot take steps. That is our important checkpoint for this. Supplies you need, shoes, and you have to put them on this patient. Gait belt, wheelchair.
Yep.
When you go to the test, if you get this skill, they're going to try to find somebody about your body size or smaller to be your patient. And they're going to try to find somebody that fits that criteria that has slip-on shoes on. So you don't have to work real hard getting the shoes on.
Mm-hmm.
Where do those evaluators want to be? At home, in their pools, drinking their margaritas. They do not want to watch you struggle to put shoes on somebody. So they are going to kind of assess each one of you when you come in for to do the skills. And one of the things they're going to look at, believe it or not, is your shoes. You won't even recognize that they're doing that. You won't realize it. Like, you know, I assess as easy as I breathe. I look at your color. I look at your body language. Are you sitting up straight? Are you hunched over? I look at how much you're fidgeting. I look at how much you're talking, how much you're engaging with others, your eye contact. I look at all of that. That's all assessment, guys. But I'm also looking at what you're wearing, your shoe. I'm looking at all of it, and I do it without even being aware of it because I'm a nurse, and nurses are trained to assess, right? Those evaluators are nurses. So when you come in and they just kind of scan you, they take in all of that. Good? Make sense? All right, so these are our supplies. Let's learn how to use them. So, if the patient's feet hit the floor, we got to talk about their shoes. And for the test, your patient's going to be laying in bed, and they'll just have their own socks on. They won't even be slipper socks. They're just, you know, when you go to test, you've got socks on. You know, their own socks will be on. When you get the patient swung around on the side of the bed, we have to put shoes on those feet. That's an important checkpoint for the state exam. We want to put those shoes on before we transfer the patient. Now, this kind of cracks me up. There's all kinds of instructors out there, and they teach all kinds of different ways. There's lots of ways to get these checkpoints, right? There's no one final way that everything has to be done. There's lots of ways. But there was a school not too long ago that knew that shoes were an important checkpoint, right? So they started training their students to put the shoes on while the patients were still in bed. Shoes are dirty. Do you think those dirty shoes belong on the patient's sheets? Now, yes, it got the checkpoint for putting shoes on. But was that the best way to get the checkpoint? Probably not. And yes, it got the checkpoint for this, but it violated the infection control checkpoint. So they stopped teaching that, thankfully. But yeah, don't put the shoes on when the patient's in bed, unless you're changing the sheets. Now, if you're changing the sheets right after you get the patient out of bed and into a wheelchair, that might be okay. I still wouldn't do it because I don't like shoes in the bed. I just think that's kind of icky. But don't leave those sheets if the shoes are in the bed. All right, so slipper socks are not enough to keep the patient safe. We already know that. We know how to use a gait belt. We put it around the patient's waist. We secure it through the first guard, get it tight enough that we can only fit 4 fingers, and then we secure it through the second guard to lock it into place. We want to verbally state that the patient's feet are on the floor, and you got to make sure they're flat. So ask, are your feet flat on the floor? And then once we've got all of that done, we're going to use the gait belt, grab it around the sides of the back, their hands on your shoulders. 1, 2, 3, we're going to stand. All of that is the same. You use that oblique angle. Nothing new here. It's all the same as ambulate. This is where we start to get into some changes. Now, theoretically, this is the same, right? When we put a patient back in the chair, we had to make sure that that seat was behind their legs. We're going to do the same thing here. We're actually going to make sure that they can feel that chair behind them before we sit. The difference is that we are controlling where that patient is. Remember, they can't take steps. So we've got to make sure that wheelchair is close enough, and we've got to ask, can you feel the wheelchair behind you? That's a whole lot of words. Can you feel that wheelchair seat behind you? And then you got to wait for them to hear it and wait for them to respond. That's a lot of this time. Lift. Can you feel the wheelchair behind you? Okay. That's a lot of holding time. Not efficient. I don't do that. What I do is I tell the patient before I lift them, I'm going to lift you up and swing you around. When you feel that wheelchair behind your legs, I want you to say sit. So put your hands on my shoulders, grab the feet up. Remember, when you feel the wheelchair behind you, say sit. 1, 2, 3, up, over, sit, down. I'm not holding that weight. Good? Make sense?
Yeah.
So that is a change from ambulate. We're in control of that. All right, so let's look at the skill-specific steps. This patient cannot walk or take steps, and we want to make sure that wheelchair is close enough. Now, unfortunately, our patient is laying down in bed. If I grab a wheelchair and I bring it close to the bed, like this, we're just going to let her be our guinea pig right now. If I bring a wheelchair close to the bed like this, because I got to get her in it, the first step, though, is to get her sitting on the side of the bed. If the wheelchair is here, her feet are going to hit the wheelchair when I get her sitting on the side of the bed. So when we get the wheelchair prepped, you want to make sure it's within reach, because we're not going to leave our patient, but it's not in the way of that pivot. So we want the wheelchair out a little bit. Okay. Brakes. This skill is all about brakes, brakes, and more brakes. Brakes are important. So let me explain to you what this means. Wheelchairs, by the way, there's 2 different kinds of wheelchairs. Actually, there's multiple kinds, but 2 main types. This is a wheelchair. Now, they come in all different colors and sizes and things like that, but this is a wheelchair. It has big wheels. There's another type of chair that has 4 small wheels, like what's in the front. 4 small wheels. Those are not called wheelchairs. Those are called companion chairs. I don't know why, but they're called companion chairs. And they're lower and designed specifically. They got all-wheel drive. Like this doesn't. Like these back wheels will only roll in one direction. These companion chairs have all-wheel drive. So they're kind of like your chairs. You can go in all different directions. They're extremely maneuverable. And they're designed for patients that can self-propel. So you know the little people that just kind of pad along, right? That's what those chairs are for. They're a little bit different. They're not going to have leg rests and foot pedals because we want the patient's feet on the floor to be able to pad wherever they want to go. Mm-hmm. But this is a wheelchair. We call them that because they have big wheels. Wheelchairs have brakes. Companion chairs don't. Wheelchairs have brakes. And the brakes are going to be located right in front of the big wheels, right here in front of the big wheels. When there's a gap between the brake and the wheel, it's unlocked. To lock it, what we're doing is pushing that metal piece into the wheel to lock it in place. Now, the way that happens, you can push the little things forward on some models. You can pull them backwards on some models. Every wheelchair is going to be set up a little different. The important part to remember is if there's a gap, no brake, no gap, brake. Got it? Mm-hmm. Every wheelchair works a little different. So when we leave a patient in a wheelchair, it must be locked. Has to be locked. And the reason is floors are rarely completely level, especially in Florida, because we build on sand. And as the building settles, that foundation tends to crack, especially the bigger the foundation, the more cracks it's going to have. And you end up with a floor that is not completely level. Now, if I've got a patient in a wheelchair, there's a lot of weight there. If they're on an unlevel floor in an unlocked wheelchair, they can begin to roll. And nothing's going to stop them. So when you have a patient in a wheelchair, it must be locked. Now, interestingly enough, wooden floors do this too. So up north, wooden floors, they really warp because of humidity and things. Interestingly enough, the biggest negligence lawsuit actually occurred here in Florida over a wheelchair that was left unlocked. And the patient was a dementia patient, unaware of their own safety, was able to get out of the locked unit into a stairwell and went down a flight of concrete steps, ended up dying. So there were a lot of failures on this part, but the biggest one was if the wheelchair had been locked, the patient would still be safe. That's where the failure began. Now, there were failures after that, yes, but that's where the failure began. So because it was the biggest negligence lawsuit, big money, you can bet that this is an important testing checkpoint because they want to make sure this doesn't happen again. Yeah, with hospitals, you got to get their attention through their checkbooks. Yeah. That's how things change. Wheelchair brakes are not a restraint. I've actually had a couple of people argue with me over this. Wheelchair brakes are not a restraint. If you lock that wheelchair, it is not a restraint. Your patient can still go wherever they want to go. They unlock the wheelchair and go. We aren't tying them to it. We're not tying them to the wall.
It's just a safety net.
It's a safety measure. If a person tries to get up out of the wheelchair and it's not locked, what's going to happen? Yeah, absolutely. If they want to go somewhere, they can unlock it and go wherever they want to. Wheelchair brakes are not a restraint. If your patient cannot stop themselves, they're going to get hurt. So we put the brakes on all wheelchairs, and it's up to the patient to unlock it and go wherever they want to. If the patient can't unlock it, that means they can't stop injuries from happening. All right. So all wheelchairs should be locked when not actively in use. That will be a written test question, by the way. That will be a written test question. Now, wheelchairs are higher than other chairs. I don't have this chair here to show you, but wheelchairs are elevated, and it's on purpose. We want to push the patient somewhere. This makes your patient mobile. This, we want your feet flat on the floor so that your body is supported. So wheelchairs are always a little bit higher than other chairs. Now, why do I care? Well, it's all because of blood flow. Along the back of your legs, you've got arteries and veins that run all along the back of your legs. And where they tend to branch off is right behind the knee, just above the knee area. Now, when you are in a wheelchair that's higher than a regular chair, that seat, the edge of that seat is going to hit right where those branches are. And what that does, the weight, because of gravity, the weight of your leg is going to compress those blood vessels between the bone of your leg and the edge of the seat. So those blood vessels get crimped off. What effect does this have on the patient? Well, we end up with swelling because blood flow can't return to the heart. And you also increase the risk of blood clots. Now, this is what happens with a blood clot. In your veins, particularly in the lower body, your heart pumps blood down to your toes. But that blood has to be able to get back up to your heart. It's not a one-way system. It's got to circulate. That blood that's in your toes has to fight gravity to get back up to your heart. And gravity is trying to pull that blood down and keep it in the toes. So veins are lower pressure systems. So what happens is that in the veins, particularly in the lower body, you have these little valves. So when the heart beats, the blood that's in this chamber gets pushed up into this one, and those valves close. So it's like climbing a ladder. Isn't that cool? The blood just goes up each chamber until it gets back to your heart. Pretty cool system. Like, pretty cool. When we have compression of those areas, let me go back here. When we have compression of those areas and those valves are closed, compressed, the blood can't progress into the next chamber, and blood that slows down or stops will always clot. So that's why we're at risk of blood clots. And you can see how those red blood cells and platelets can get all kind of clumped up in there, and that's how a clot would occur. The clots are bad.
Mhm.
Where do you think all veins are heading? If you had to guess. Where do you think all veins are heading? Remember, arteries are taking blood to the toes. Veins are bringing blood back to the heart. That's right. So if we get a blood clot in the leg, what's the next stop? The heart. Do you think blood clots in the heart's a good idea? No. Now, from the heart, it goes to the lungs. So if that clot makes it through the heart, it's way worse, because then it goes to the lungs. And the lungs branch off into these itty bitty teeny tiny arteries, and that clot will absolutely stop up that pulmonary artery. And you won't get any new oxygen in your blood. That is a death sentence if it gets to the lungs. So we want to prevent that. No clots are good clots. So to prevent it, we want to get those feet on foot pedals. So when we put a patient in a wheelchair, remember wheelchairs are higher. When we put the patient in the wheelchair, we want those feet up on foot pedals. Don't let those legs dangle. Super important. Okay, so in order to get those legs up, we have these two areas on the wheelchair. One of them is, they're called leg rests here, and foot pedals here. Leg rests just hold the foot pedals, but when you have the foot pedals like this, that's going to support the feet. But you can't get a patient into a wheelchair with those in the way. You can't get them out of the wheelchair with those in the way. So what we have to do is fold up those foot pedals. But these leg rests are now kind of in the way. So we got to get those out of the way as well. And on the back of your leg rest is a little catch. If you pull the catch, they just swing out to the side. And now I've got a wide open wheelchair to get my patient into or out of. Remember, the wheelchair would be locked. Once I get them sitting in the wheelchair, I simply snap these back in place, fold the foot pedals down, and put their feet on them. And now they're ready to go wherever it is that I need to take them, which in this case, according to the care plan, is their room. Good? So, wheelchairs have lots of different pieces to them. Wheelchairs are usually kept in the folded position for storage. If you've got the foot pedals like this, you can't fold them up. Those foot pedals are in the way. So to fold this wheelchair, I'm going to fold the foot pedals up. Leave the leg rests where they are. And I'm going to pull up on the center of the seat, and the two halves go together. That's how you fold a wheelchair for storage. You want to keep those leg rests out though, because if I let those leg rests, if they're not locked in place, they flap, and you risk injuring somebody as you're taking the wheelchair by them. So the leg rests need to be locked when it's in storage. To open a wheelchair, you lift the big wheels off of the floor and pull it apart. That's it. Very manual. So, the three setups for a wheelchair: when in use, foot pedals are down, leg rests are forward. When stored, foot pedals are up, leg rests are forward. When we're getting a patient into or out of, foot pedals are up, leg rests are out. You could have a written test question that asks you, what is the appropriate configuration for a wheelchair when you're going to be transferring a patient into or out of? And they will have these graphics. Yep, you want to make sure that it's wide open. So this is a caution about stepping outside of your scope of practice, even if you think it's helping. This is a lawsuit in Georgia. This is so sad because this worker really thought she was doing a good deed. She really did. This was a clerical worker, like a registration worker. A woman came in with her daughter, an older woman, and she was there for a test. Daughter went out to get the car, brought it up front. The patient, older lady, in a wheelchair, and there was no transporter to take the patient to the car. So the daughter's in the car out front waiting, the patient in the wheelchair waiting. The registration clerk sees all this and thinks, I can help. Takes the patient in the wheelchair out to the car. She was trying to help. I mean, wheelchairs, they're not that difficult, right? Takes the wheelchair out to the car, did not put the foot pedals up, did not swing the leg rests out of the way, did not lock the wheelchair, stood the patient up, the wheelchair went rolling, the patient lost her balance and fell between the car and the curb and broke her leg. She didn't get to go home. She had to turn around and go right back into the facility, and now she's admitted. So this worker thought she was doing a good deed, and I feel so bad for her because her heart was in the right place. But does that erase the broken leg? No. Do not step outside of your scope of practice. It seems like a simple thing. I can help the patient out to the car. But if you haven't been trained on how to use a wheelchair, you don't know all these little details. And it's the little details that's going to put your patient at risk. It's what you don't know. And you don't know what you don't know. Okay? So if you haven't been trained on it, what's your answer? Don't do it. I'm sorry, I can't. Let me call the transporter again. All right, so we'll bring that wheelchair near the bed. We're going to fold the foot pedals up, get the leg rests out of the way, and then we're going to pivot the patient so they're sitting on the side of the bed. Put their shoes on. Put the gait belt on. Doesn't matter what order you do that. Shoes first, gait belt first, nobody cares. Make sure the gait belt is tight enough, 4-finger check. You're going to stand at that, or you're going to bring the wheelchair close, lock it in place, have them put their hands on your shoulders, tell them when they feel the chair, let you know. On the count of 3, 1, 2, 3, we're going to stand up, pivot, they say sit, you have them sit. Take the gait belt off, swing the wheelchair around, bring the leg rests, foot pedals, lock the wheelchair, close it. That's it. So this isn't a hard skill. They give you 11 minutes to do all that, which is, to me, insane. Does not take 11 minutes. But as long as you understand everything that we just talked about, this is actually a pretty quick skill. Jacob, could you do me a favor?
Yes, ma'am.
Will you get Miss Sally May and put her on that back table, please?
Mhm.
So pivoting the patient onto the side of the bed is actually the hardest part of this particular skill. And you can pivot somebody bigger than you think you can, but you've got to take the time to practice this one so you can learn your own personal limits as far as what you can handle. But pivoting somebody,
Trying to do without moving everything.
yeah,
It's not gonna work.
She looks uncomfortable.
She-
Did you ask her if she was comfortable?
I don't think
Yeah.
I did. Would you like a magazine?
That foot just cracked me up.
Just-
That
Just
foot
doing its own thing.
cracked me up.
We should have some people.
Some body horror.
Very much so. Okay. So pivoting a patient onto the side of the bed is the hardest part of this particular skill, I think. But you can handle somebody a little bit bigger than you think you can. You've just got to practice it to find out. The trick with this that most people get wrong, when somebody goes to pivot on the side of the bed, what most people do is they put their hand under the shoulder. We all got that one. That makes sense. But they put this hand under the knees. And this is a honeymoon carry. This is not, it's just not, that's not going to help you.
Yeah.
It's under the shoulders, over the knees. And when you do this, it's just a simple pivot. Does that make sense? So this arm doesn't go under, it goes over. And when you do it over, it becomes pretty easy. That's the key to a good pivot. We'll put the shoes on, make sure the feet are flat on the floor, get the wheelchair super close. That's not even close enough. And we're going to engage the brakes. Make sure those wheels are locked. Get the gait belt on, make sure it's snug enough. We're going to stand with our foot in front and one to the side. We're going to lift with our legs, not our back. Swing them around. When they feel that chair behind them, they're going to say whatever code word you gave them. You're going to sit them down. After you sit them, you'll get the foot pedals and the leg rests in place. You'll take that gait belt off. You'll lock the wheelchair. Nobody cares what order you do that in. Nobody cares. Just make sure that's all done. And then you'll make sure that they're properly positioned in the wheelchair. So when you do this, I have seen some crazy things. When you get the patient sitting in the wheelchair, you want to make sure they're sitting in the wheelchair. They're not like this. Make sure they're sitting, because remember I said that you're going to be a live patient for this? You are going to get very specific instructions when you're the patient. You are going to be told, do not take steps. Do not take steps. And when they position you in the wheelchair, do not readjust your position. So normally if somebody put us in a wheelchair and we were like half out, we would scoot ourselves back. They're going to tell you don't do that. So don't take steps and don't readjust your position, because it's a graded checkpoint, making sure that you, as the CNA, check that position. Okay. So make sure you check. Look at the patient. You should always be looking at the patient. We'll perform all of the steps of our closing. For this skill, your patient's going to be near the bed. Just make sure that call light is within reach for them. All right. So, are your shoes slip-ons?
Mhm.
Okay. I'm going to have you be a patient for this.
Okay.
He's not good. Okay. Slip your shoes off and lay down in the bed for me.
Lay down on the job. Good.
All right. I love that camera. Before this, we just got that like a month ago. I had a actual video camera set up on a tripod that if I wanted to move, I had to go move the camera. And this thing is, I love this thing. All right, so we're going to start with our opening. I'm going to simulate hand washing because I don't want to take the time to go to the bathroom, and where it's my second skill. We're going to simulate hand washing. Here we go. Hi, Mr. Jones.
Hello,
How are you today?
doing well. How are you?
Wonderful. My name is Patty. I'm your CNA today, and I'd like to get you into a wheelchair. Is that okay?
Okay.
I'm going to close your curtain, wash my hands, get my supplies, and I'll be right back. Close the curtain. I have clean hands. And I'm going to get the gait belt. So I'm going to have the wheelchair close, but not too close. I'm going to just lay the gait belt in the wheelchair, and I'm going to move these footrests out of the way so that when I'm ready to pull this forward, it's already set up. All right, Mr. Jones, I'm going to take your sheet down. Remember, you don't want that sheet on the floor. Don't let the sheet touch the floor. Okay. I'm going to get you sitting on the side of the bed. Can you scoot your whole body toward me, please? Okay. All right. I'm going to do all the work here. You're going to cross your arms across your chest and just relax one. I'm going to put this arm under your shoulders and this one over the knees. Wide base of support. And we're going to lean our knees against the bed. So you want to make sure that bed is locked when you do this. So I'm going to put my hand under the shoulders and over the knees. And on the count of 3, and on the count of 3, we're going to pivot. 1, 2, 3. Good?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, go ahead and relax. Are your feet flat on the floor?
Mm-hmm.
Let's get your
It's
shoes
a little
on.
too tall for the bed.
Let's get your shoes on. Go ahead and slide your foot in.
They're slip-ons, you don't have to worry about the back.
Okay. Slide your foot in. Okay. Now I'm going to put the gait belt around your waist. Relax. I'm going to put it through the first guard by the alligator teeth. We'll pull it so that it's snug. 4 fingers. Okay, and now I'm going to get the wheelchair close. Can you bring your legs back just a little bit? I'm going to get the wheelchair close, like that. Lock it in place. All right, Mr. Jones, I'm going to lift you up, swing you around. When you feel that wheelchair behind your legs, I want you to say sit.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to put my foot in front of yours. You're going to put your hands up here. And on the count of 3, I'm going to lift and swing. You'll say sit when you feel that shit. Ready?
Okay.
1, 2, 3.
Sit.
Thank you. We'll remove the gait belt.
Probably been easier if I didn't have a jacket on.
Go ahead and move your arms. There you go. All right, I'm going to swing you around now.
Okay.
We'll unlock the wheelchair. Swing the patient around.
Now, what if they wanted to look at the corner?
Tell the nurse. Because that patient may have a psyche valve in their future. All right, so I'm just going to swing that leg rest forward so it doesn't get trapped beside the bed. We'll get him beside the bed here.
My feet keep in the wheels and blocking them.
And we'll lock the wheelchair. I'm going to put the foot pedal down. Rest your foot. Foot pedal down. He's moving on his own. You're not supposed to move on your own.
Sorry.
I'm going to lock the wheelchair. All right, Mr. Jones, is there anything else I can get for you on here?
No, thank you.
Are you comfortable?
Yes, ma'am.
Would you like a magazine before I go?
No, thank you.
Here's the call light. Can you reach it? Good. If you need anything at all, just press that red button.
Okay.
I'm going to go return this to storage. Open the curtain. The wheelchair is locked. Environment is clean. I'm going to go wash my hands. After washing my hands, I'll review the steps of my skill, make any corrections. My skill is done.
Can you bring the gate belt back first, then open the curtain?
Doesn't matter.
Okay.
Does not matter. However you want to. Just don't leave the gate belt on him. Okay.
Thank you.
You can get up, watch your step. Questions? Okay.
So let's say like if the person is up and down and their back isn't touching all the way on the back of their wheelchair,
Mhm.
are you able to like lift them back up again?
You can, yeah, you can. Or you can just, for the test, just ask them. Just ask them, can you scoot back? It's fine. But yeah, take a look at the patient. Any questions? Pretty easy, right?
Yeah.
Okay, before we get into the next one, I've got a lot to tell you about feet. A lot. And then we're gonna get into Peri-care. So those are two big lecture skills. Let's go ahead and take our break a little bit early today.
Okay.
Get that out of the way so that I can just roll right into the next.
Go ahead. You're muted.
Oh, I forgot what's.
What slide you were on?
Yeah. I'll find it. It's fine.
So two things. Read through these two emails. Well, most importantly, the most recent one.
Okay. Can you get me a Dr. Pepper's?
Absolutely. There you go.
Thank you.
It's because they're on a school network and school internet. The school has like all those filters and
Yeah.
proxy preventions and stuff. But you could get a kick out of that.
Well, it could be our site as well because I've noticed it's slow to load
is
for
slowing.
me too. Yeah. It's got to be addressed and
Well, we'll worry about it another time. Because right now, like you said, we're worried about the website platform.
yeah.
It's just the API, right? Or whatever the programming is.
It's our server.
Gotcha.
And the amount of ads that are loading.
You have Amazon Prime, right?
Mm-hmm.
You get the 2-day shipping on those? Is it free 2-day shipping?
Yeah.
If I sent you something, could you order it for me?
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll pay you cash?
Cool.
It's a Lego engine. It has an electrical thing, but
Nice.
you turn it on and the whole thing moves like a real engine. So all of it, it's a working model display thing.
So all you got to do is do this. Let's empty that. I had it 50% off, so it's like $120 for that
Oh, wow.
larger standing desk.
Do you still have that?
No, I'm going to delete that.
Mold King, MOULD. It's this one or that one. I think it's actually the same one, yeah. Yep.
Okay, so add to cart. It's going to be delivered on Sunday. Proceed to checkout, and then you
Oh, I can put in my credit card.
can put in your credit card.
Actually, no, I thought it was on there. Okay.
So we're going to add a debit or credit card. There you go.
Oh. Cool.
No, it's not the default billing address.
Oh,
Okay, so I'm gonna have to pay for it.
I can give you cash for it tomorrow.
Yeah, so
Yeah, I'll bring cash tomorrow for that.
I get points anyway. So
Okay. Cool.
there's tax.
That's fine. So 140. You got it. Thank you.
Okay, you're done.
It said 2-day shipping on that.
It's going to be here Sunday,
Oh, okay.
so a little bit longer.
That's fine.
You save $6.99 though. I think it's being shipped not by Amazon. It's being shipped by the.
Yeah, they're a third party seller, and I believe they're located in Europe,
Oh well, that's
which
Really?
is why I'm surprised it's getting here in 2 days.
that's
You
really.
actually thought you put in the drawer.
Oh, that fell out of my pocket when I was in bed.
Yep.
Forgot that was in my pocket to begin with. Thank you. It's like a pinata, but dropping goodies.
Like what showed up on my doorstep this morning,
Lucky man.
apparently.
So he's doing more land clearings and stuff now. That's awesome. Of course, Matt's got to pose with it. It's heavy equipment, of course. Oh. There it is.
Yeah, you'll be able to see it when you come to the house.
Yeah. Oh. Did Julie get that cabinet yet? No, not yet. Julie's getting another one of these IKEA shelves.
Yeah.
I had it here today so I could put it together. And then, oh, did you respond to Stuber? Oh, no,
not
okay,
yet.
there it is. And then this one,
Yeah, I know. I read it.
okay. I wasn't sure how to respond.
It'll have to wait until I get.
That's what I figured.
He's so funny. This is the discount code, people.
Mm.
But that's how he starts it.
There's one streamer I've been watching, but it's like he just keeps spending like $1,000 on Temu on random stuff,
Mhm.
just trying to figure out if it's scams or not. He bought an entire computer off Temu, just part by part, put it together, about $800.
Mhm.
Thing wouldn't even turn on.
Oh, geez.
None of it worked, and it was all like cloned tech stuff, but it
Mhm.
was, you know,
Yeah, I refuse to order from those places.
I won't buy off Amazon anymore if it's electronics. Especially not after buying an Amazon TV that plays ads on
See?
the homepage. Mm-hmm.
Desk.
It is a nice desk.
That one's only 80. That's a good deal.
Mm-hmm.
This is Caitlin's twins.
Oh, she had twins.
Born in like 28 weeks.
Very premature.
They've been in the NICU for 35 days. and they're still less than 2 pounds.
Oh my goodness.
One of them has,
Cleft palate?
yeah, this one. No,
Hmm.
Oh, good. I've got her on room air. They were going to put one of them on room air. Nice.
Looks like they're doing better. And they're moving around.
Yeah. Super sad.
Oh, did you hear about the near miss with the planes the other day?
Yes. They had to do a touch and go.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Almost collided on the runway.
Yeah. I would be very, very,
Scared to fly?
yeah, at the moment.
It's hard to argue with. You want to put the chair back in the closet, or we leave it out for now? Well, practice later.
Leave it out for them to practice, please.
Replace it with the Starlink system.
My gosh. No words.
Mm-hmm.
Completely forgot to bring another bag in for that kid.
Oh. I feel this.
There was that video that came out. I think it was New Jersey. One of the water mains broke the night it flooded, or
Yeah, I saw
snowed.
that. Yeah.
Everything was up like 3 feet.
Hmm.
right. Ready? 3, 2, 1, unmuted.
Okay. I have no idea where we were. Okay. Page 109 is where we're at. This is feeding a resident who's in a chair. This is not a hard skill. You're feeding somebody. I mean, there's not much here. Don't overload the spoon. Give them time to chew and swallow. Ask what they want to eat. I mean, there's not a whole lot here about this. You do want to make sure that they're sitting up straight. That's going to be a big part of this. We're going to get to that in just a minute. Page 108, let me go back a page here. Page 108 gives us our principles for this one. We know everything we need to know. If you look down here, you've got 9 minutes to feed somebody. It's going to be a live patient. That means you might possibly be fed during the test. They use a single serve pudding or applesauce cup. That's what they use, single serve pudding or applesauce cup. The patient will be sitting in a chair at the beginning of the skill, and this is a documentation skill, so we do have to get into the documentation part of this a little bit. But let me explain to you some of the things that they're going to be looking at for the state exam. If you look up here at the care plan, you can see feed a resident a snack who is unable to feed him or herself, so they can't feed themselves. It does not say that they're paralyzed. It does not say that they're immobile. It does not say that they're a 90-year-old invalid. It just says they're unable to feed him or herself. Don't read into this. But we have to think about this for a second. If we are feeding somebody and food starts to drip down, they're going to, without even thinking about it, bring their hand up and wipe that food away. So do you think that they want to do that with dirty hands? Mm-hmm. So even though we are feeding them, we're going to offer them a hand wipe before we start so that they have clean hands at the beginning of this skill. It's also because most people wash their hands before they eat. So this is an appetite stimulant as well. It's kind of part of the eating ritual, the eating process. It says the resident is sitting in a chair in an inappropriate position for eating. The care plan is telling you they're not in an appropriate position. That means that's got to be addressed. So it doesn't matter what your eyes say for the test. The care plan says in appropriate position. So they want to hear you say something like, can you please sit up? Are you sitting up straight? Something that addresses this. Tells us to document the intake on the food and fluid intake form, and we're going to get into that in just a minute. So our supplies down here, we need a towel to offer a clothing protector over them. We need a hand wipe. We need a meal tray, and it'll already be prepared for you. There's going to be a cup of water, a single serve food item, a spoon, a fork, and a napkin on a tray at the beginning of the skill. You need a pen and a documentation form as well. Those are your supplies. Now, this skill does not follow the rules. That's why I teach it toward the end of the program, because it does not follow our rules. We don't use a barrier on the table. Our food tray is the barrier. We don't need a barrier. We don't close the privacy curtain. It's the only skill that we don't close the privacy curtain for. And that's because eating is social. People gather in groups to eat. In fact, during COVID, when COVID hit inside institutions like assisted living, nursing homes, things, they made the patients eat in their rooms. They didn't go to the dining room during COVID. They made them eat in their rooms. as a group, they lost weight. People lost weight during COVID if they were institutionalized because we rely on socialization as part of appetite. When you are feeding somebody, if you close that curtain, they may not eat very well. It isolates. Does that make sense? So we don't close the curtain. You have to sit while you're feeding somebody. You can't stand over somebody and shovel food into their mouth. There's a, I can't remember, I can't think of the word right now. My mind is a little fried. But the dynamic there is inferiority dynamic. If you're standing above somebody and feeding them, it makes them inferior, and they feel that psychologically. The reason for that is this. Eating is the hardest skill to be a patient for. Not for the test. For the test, we're just kind of playing a role. I'm talking about in real life. If you cannot feed yourself and somebody has to feed you, it affects you psychologically in a way that's incomparable to any other skill. And that's because eating is the first thing you become independent at. You learn how to hold a bottle long before you're sitting, standing, crawling, or walking. You learn how to pick up food off of a high chair tray and get it to your mouth before you even know what hungry is. Eating is the first skill you become independent at. So when you lose the ability to feed yourself, it affects you psychologically in a way that no other skill can. Does that make sense? So if you're standing over somebody while you're feeding them, that feeds into that inferiority. It also is going to make them feel rushed, anxious. So you've got to sit, you've got to have, be at eye level with them, but you also have to have a conversation.
Does it
with
matter where you sit? Like, can you sit on the bed? Like, not on the bed, but like next to them, or just a chair?
For the test, there's going to be a chair there. And no, there's no checkpoint that says, that you're not sitting on the bed. Me personally, I don't sit on the bed because I know what people do in beds, and I don't want to sit on any of that. So I don't sit on the bed, I'll pull up a chair. But there's no checkpoint that forbids it. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to have a conversation. It doesn't have to be a real conversation. You can make something up for the test. Now, every other skill, we just tell them what we're doing. I'm going to put this privacy blanket over you. I'm going to remove your gown. I'm going to wash your back. I mean, we're telling them kind of step by step what we're doing, and that's our conversation. You can't do that with a skill. You can't say, okay, I'm going to get some food on the spoon, and I'm going to bring it to your mouth. That's very condescending. So you can't do that with a skill. You have to have a real conversation, but it doesn't have to be real. So you can say something like, they're showing a movie on the big screen in the activity room later. Would you like to go? I think it's make up a name. You can say, did you see those little kids come in for Valentine's Day? They were all dressed up. That little preschool brought those kids in. They were all in hearts. Wasn't that cute? Make exactly make something up.
Can I talk about how they slept if they had any dreams?
Sure, absolutely. Me personally, when I'm working with real patients and I have to have a conversation, one of my favorite conversation starters is, what's the most exciting place you've ever been? Mm-hmm. Now, think about that for a second. If I were to ask you, what's the most exciting place you've ever been? You've probably been more than one place. So now your brain is trying to catalog which one is the most exciting, right? So you got lots of conversation opportunities there. Where did you grow up? That's a great question as well. Most people are willing to talk about that. But I usually will look around their environment for clues. Mm-hmm. So people put out things that they're willing to talk about. We don't take our skeletons from our closet and put them on our walls. So if you look around and you see a picture, like, there's pictures on the refrigerator back there. If I were working with a patient, this is their home. I see pictures on the refrigerator. What an adorable little girl. Who is that? They're willing to talk about things that are out in the open. Now, in a clinical setting, usually the picture that you're going to see is an old black and white picture of a woman who was done up to the nine. These women put us to shame. Seriously. They knew how to put themselves together. They look amazing, and they're always standing next to a man in uniform, right? And I'll look at that picture, and I do something like this, and I do this every time. I'll look at that picture, and I'll go, oh, what a beautiful couple. Were they movie stars? Did you know them? Watch her sit up a little straighter. Oh, honey, that's me.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what did I do? First of all, I improved her mood. I showed interest in her life, but I also encouraged her confidence, which means she's going to eat better.
Mm-hmm.
So I have no problem doing, I don't care what that picture looks like. I am going to say, what a beautiful couple. Were they movie stars? Did you know them? And watch the reaction. Yeah. But in most cases, it's true because these women knew how to dress.
Soil was different.
Yeah.
Soil wasn't depleted.
Yes, very true.
And that's what they have in their rooms, all those photos.
Yeah. And they want to talk about them. They're just waiting for somebody to listen. But sometimes you'll get a patient that gives you an answer you weren't expecting. I had one lady, and I'll never forget her. This was way back in the 90s that I took care of this woman, and I'll never forget her. I was up in Citrus County, and I was doing home care, and I was on the wound care team. So I went into this woman's, she was in an assisted living facility, but very independent. She just, was there for meals and laundry and housekeeping and stuff like that, but she was pretty independent. But she had these horrible wounds on her legs from vascular insufficiency. I mean, this was a really extensive wound care. It was going to be there like 45 minutes. Really extensive. So I pull up a little rolling chair. I sit down. I'm unwrapping her legs. And I ask her my standard question, what's the most exciting place you've ever been? And she says, oh, honey, I've never been anywhere. I said, really? Never been anywhere? And I'm just kind of playing it off, not really thinking about it. And she says, yeah, I've never left the county. Wait, what? This is Citrus County. What do you mean you never left the county? She says, I've never left the county. I said, you've never been to Ocala? She says, no. And then she says, well, that's not entirely true. I was born in Brooksville, but I don't think that really counts. This is a woman in her late 90s that has never left the county. Now, aside from me wanting to bundle her up and put her in the car and take her to Ocala just because, imagine all the things she has seen in her life in that county. And she's been there long enough to be able to see the changes. She remembers when the first road was paved in Citrus County. Crazy. She remembers when the first car dealership came in, and that was a big deal. There were two families in Inverness that were rivals. And the boy from one family was supposed to marry the girl from the other family to kind of heal. And she ran off with somebody else. Oh, it was a huge scandal. I was there for 45 minutes. We had an hour and a half conversation. And I called the office and I said, send me back out here. Because this is living history. This is stuff you're not going to see in a history book. But it's about the county that I live in. This is amazing. But here was somebody who didn't think she had anything to offer. And it turned out to be the most interesting conversation I've ever had with a patient. All you have to do is get them talking. People tend to talk about themselves. If you want to be a good conversationalist, learn how to shut your mouth and open your ears. You'll be known as a great conversationalist because people want to talk. Just gotta give them an opening. But for the test, I usually keep to something simple, like they're playing bingo later. I hear the jackpot's up to $2.10, and Mabel says she's gonna win it. She's got her lucky shirt on today. Something like that. Or they're showing a movie on the big screen, which is what you're gonna see in the video. Something like that. Remember, you're only giving them a very little bit of food. It doesn't have to be a long conversation. In fact, when you are the patient for this skill, you're going to get some very specific instructions. The first is that the evaluator is going to tell you to slouch or slump. So you kind of got to do, something. Remember, the care plan says that the patient's in an inappropriate position for eating, and your idea of inappropriate may be completely different from mine. So the care plan is going to reinforce that. But you're going to be told to slouch or slump. The second thing you're going to be told to do is eat like you eat. Don't drool, don't spit, don't make this difficult for anybody. Eat like you eat, but only take 4 bites. That's it, 4 bites. After that, you're going to say, I'm done, I'm finished, no thank you, I don't want any more. Whatever the CNA says to you, just, I'm done. So for the test, you're only giving somebody 4 bites of food. This doesn't have to be a long conversation. Good? As the CNA, when somebody stops eating, they're judging you on what you're going to do. If you go, thank God, I got a million things to do, let me take your tray, if you try to rush out of there, that's not what they're looking for. They want you to give at least 2 forms of encouragement. At least 2. We have 3 that we can use, but they want you to use at least 2. And the 3 that I generally use are you sure you don't want just one more bite? Because you can always get further with patients by being nice than being mean. So are you sure you don't want just one more bite for me, please? Usually I get somebody to take another bite. Turn up the charm, it works. The second thing that I do is I ask, is there something else I can get for you while I'm here? And usually we've all had those days, guys. If somebody's only taking a bite or 2, you have had this day where you get something, you take a bite, and you're like, nope, not it, not what I was looking for. Well, you have the freedom to go to the kitchen and get something different. Your patient doesn't. So I usually will ask, can I get you something else? The third thing that I tell them is there is food available. If you get hungry later, please let me know. That way they know it's not a one and done situation. Food is available. You need to use at least 2 of those. Would you like one more bite? Would you like something else? Food available. Use at least 2. So for this skill, we're going to ensure the patient is sitting upright. So we're going to physically say, can you please sit up straight? We're going to offer them a hand wipe and a clothing protector. They don't have to wear a clothing protector. They don't have to. It's not daycare. We don't call it a bib. It's a clothing protector. But they don't have to wear one. We are going to offer one though. Me, I need one. I wear everything that I eat. Everything. But you try to put one of those on my grandmother, who is extremely prim and proper, and she would bat it out of your hands and tell you in no uncertain terms that she is not a child. So we're going to offer, would you like a clothing protector? They can say yes or no. I don't care. And you're going to offer them a hand wipe as well. We're going to have a seat facing the patient while we feed them. We're going to offer a drink before feeding and every 2 or 3 bites. We're going to feed slowly, and the spoon should only be half full. So if we play this out, guys, we're giving 4 half full spoonfuls of food. They're not eating much. So if you're the patient and you don't particularly like applesauce, can you choke down 4 half full spoonfuls? If you're allergic to applesauce, please let the evaluators know. If you're allergic to pudding or milk, please let the evaluators know. But if it's a preference thing, as long as you're not going to throw up, try to get through it. You don't want to make this difficult on the evaluators, just because you'd rather not. All right, we're going to have a conversation during feeding. We're going to encourage them when they stop eating. We're going to leave the mouth area around the mouth clean, and we're going to do our closing. So they give you 9 minutes to do this. Guys, we're only giving 4 half-full spoonfuls. This does not take 9 minutes. I think the video takes like 3.5. They give you way more time for this skill than you actually need. Don't rush this. This is the one skill. I cannot overstress this. This is the one skill you cannot rush because your patient will feel it.
Mm-hmm.
Good?
Yes.
We're going to document on an intake and output form, and this is going to be based on what we call the quarter scale. Now, the quarter scale, this is what the documentation form actually looks like for the state exam. Here, it's going to indicate whether you had a snack or a meal. Well, one thing of pudding, our care plan says, is a snack. Now, you might consider a thing of pudding a meal. I don't know. But the care plan says it's a snack. So we're going to check off snack. They're only taking 4 half-full spoonfuls, so they're clearly not eating the entire thing. We're going to grade this on a quarter scale. Now, a quarter scale is an estimation. Estimation. We're going to get into that in just a minute. I'm going to talk to you about documentation. So details matter here. We're going to offer the hand wipe, the clothing protector, offer a drink before feeding, and every 2 or 3 bites. We'll let them lead. We're going to feed slowly and smoothly, spoon only half full, and no childlike feeding techniques, no trains, planes, or automobiles, guys. Now, I will tell you that there are some patients out there that I have a very good rapport with, and I can get away with a little humor, but that's not during the test. So this is the quarter scale. If they didn't eat anything, it's 0. If they ate everything, it's 100%. Everything else here is subject to interpretation. You're going to estimate. If they ate about half, 50%. If they ate more than half, but not everything, 75. If they picked at it, 25. This is not like scientifically measured. This is an estimation. Good? So if we start out with this, which I have no idea why a place would serve a sandwich and broccoli. That to me just does not go together. But if we start out with this tray, a sandwich, some broccoli, and some Jell-O, and after the patient eats, we pick up this tray. They took a bite of the sandwich, had a bite of the broccoli, a couple cubes of Jell-O. What would you estimate that they ate here? About 25%. Over here, they ate half of the sandwich, half of the broccoli, and just a little less than half of the Jell-O, but it's pretty close to half. So what would we estimate this intake to be? 50%. Yeah, remember, it's not scientific. It's an estimate. Look down here, they ate most everything, but not all. Most everything.
75.
About 75. Now this one messes people up because there's still a stalk of broccoli. Stalks don't count. There's 2 pieces of Jell-O. It's close enough to call. So do you guys understand that this isn't an absolute?
Mm-hmm.
It's an estimate. So I would give this person 100%. Because stalks, they really don't count. Make sense? Okay. So now we get to the hard part. For the test, we're gonna use that same quarter scale to estimate fluid intake, how much they drink. If they didn't drink anything, 0. If they drank the whole cup, 100%. If they drank about half the cup, 50%. Estimate. But in a clinical setting, we do a little bit more than estimating for liquids, for fluids. This is called intake and output. And a lot of the patients that you take care of are going to be on intake and output measurements. Now, measurements is much more scientific than an estimate. And we have to know that 1 ounce equals 30 cc's. Cc's, mL's, same thing, 2 different names, same thing. 1 ounce equals 30 cc's. And that's because here in America, we tend to measure everything by ounces. But in medicine, we document using cc's. So we have to know how to convert it. When you go to work, wherever that is, they're going to tell you during orientation that their water cups are 6 ounces or 8 ounces, or, you know, how much does that water cup hold? And they're going to tell you their coffee cups are 9 ounces or 8 ounces, or what. You have to know that. Okay, so, you know, their water cups are 6 ounces, their coffee cups are 9 ounces. You have to know that because we're going to have to make that conversion when we're documenting intake. Make sense? Good? All right, so an 8 ounce cup of water, if we multiply 8 ounces by 30, would give us 240 cc's. A 6 ounce cup of coffee, if we multiply the 6 by 30, we get 180 cc's. You will have one math question on the state exam. It will either be converting ounces to cc's or adding up all of the cc intake during the day to get a grand total. So multiplication, simple multiplication, or addition. You will have one question on the state exam about that. So if you go to page 106, we have a activity here that can help you put this whole process into practice. So in order to know how much a patient ate, well, we kind of have to know what we're starting with. So when you're passing trays, pay attention to what's on the tray so that you know what we're starting with so we can gauge how much they actually ate. So if you look down here, there is nothing left but stains. So that's clearly 100%. If you look at the next one, well, they looks like they ate about half. So we're going to give them 50. Number 3, they ate most of it, 75. Number 4, they just kind of picked at it a little bit, so 25. I'm hungry. That looks good. All right, you can do the same thing up here with this activity, but let's go down here to the fluids, down here. 6 ounces of juice. If we had to convert that to cc's, how many cc's would that be? 180. So go ahead and write 180. But let's look at the milk for a second, because this is really interesting. The milk carton actually tells you how many cc's are in it. If the carton tells you, so mass-produced things are going to tell you how many cc's. So if you look on your water bottle there, it'll tell you it's probably 15.9 fluid ounces.
16.9.
Or 16.9. Right next to it, in parentheses, it has mLs. How many mLs?
500.
500. So the label actually tells you how many mLs. You don't have to do the conversion. You look at that Coke can. That Coke can is 12 ounces. If we multiply that by 30, we would get 360, but the Coke can actually tells us it's 355. So prepared liquids that come in a container, we go by the container. Make sense? Mm-hmm. So if you look at this milk carton, it's going to tell you it's 8 ounces of milk, but it tells you on the carton it's 240 mLs, which is the same thing. So we would document 240 if they drank the whole thing.
Would you put CCs?
CCs or mLs,
Okay.
doesn't matter. It's the same thing. Technically, it's not. If you get
Yeah.
if you get into an argument with a chemist, it's not the same because CCs is volume, mLs is liquid. That's all semantics. We don't care at the CNA level. For us, it's the same.
My math whiz used to be like, no, who's teaching you that?
Yeah. So they are a little bit different. But for our level, we don't care about that. 12 ounces, that's a heck of a big coffee cup. 12 ounces of coffee, if we multiplied that by 30, what would we get? 12 times 30. 360. So at the end of our shift, this is what our patient took in. They took in 6 ounces of orange juice, they took in 8 ounces of milk, and they took in 12 ounces of coffee. At the end of our shift, we have to add all of this up to get our shift total. So if we added together 180, 240, and 360, anybody know what we would get? Do the math. 780. So the total intake for this patient for the shift is 780. So you're going to get one of those two types of questions. Either they had 6 ounces of juice, how many cc's is that? Or they had 180 cc's of juice, 240 of milk, 360 of coffee. What was the total intake? They will give you a dry erase board during the test as scrap paper. So you'll have something that you can write down to do that now. Any questions?
No.
Good. Let's go to page 132 while we're on the subject of feeding. And we're going to talk a little bit about medical abbreviations. In that first column, you're going to see a lot of them are highlighted in gray. If it's highlighted in gray, you probably need to know it as a CNA. But if you go all the way down toward the end of that first column, you're going to see one that says NPO. I want you to put a star next to that one, NPO. NPO means nothing by mouth. And I hear you right now, Miss Patty, why does NPO mean nothing by mouth? Those words don't make sense. It's because it's abbreviated Latin, not abbreviated English. Latin is the the language of science. Medicine is a science. So a lot of what we do in medicine is based on Latin. So NPO is abbreviated for the Latin words that mean nothing by mouth. Make sense? Let me tell you a really funny story about this, and I swear this is true. I've been doing this for 17 years, and I own the scrub shop, the only scrub shop in town. And every once in a while, I would work in the store, and we would have people, nurses that came in, and they would ask me about the classes, and they would relate stories to me and say, hey, make sure your CNAs know this, or so, I kind of was plugged into the nursing community because they got to see me at the store and they knew what I did. Well, on this one particular day, this is probably about 10 years ago, this nurse comes in, and we're going to call her Kathy. We'll protect the names of the innocent. Call her Kathy. She comes in and she says, boy, do I have a story for you. You still teach CNA, right? And I said, yeah. She says, boy, do I have a story for you. Okay, I'm all ears now. She said, I work in the cath lab, the cardiac cath lab. And I went upstairs to get a patient for a cardiac cath. It's like 5 o'clock in the morning, a little before 5. First case of the day. So I go upstairs to get the patient's sitting up in bed eating. Now, before a cardiac cath, you can't have anything by mouth. So the patient's sitting up in bed eating, and this is the conversation. Kathy asks the patient, why are you eating? You're about to have a procedure. Patient says, I know, I thought it was weird too, but the nurse came in and she insisted that I eat this before I go down. And Kathy's like, doesn't make any sense, you're NPO. So she goes out to find the nurse. She finds the nurse and she says, why is my patient eating? I'm supposed to take him down for a cardiac cath. What's going on? And the nurse says, I don't know, that patient's got a student nurse today. So Kathy's like, where's the student nurse? So she goes and gets the student nurse. And this is the conversation. I'm going to play both parts, but this is the conversation. Kathy, why is the patient eating? Student nurse, because they're NPO. Kathy, I know they're NPO. Why are they eating? Student nurse, because they're NPO. I went and got the tray myself. Kathy, what do you think NPO means? I swear this is true. Student, bananas, pineapples, and oranges.
How frustrating.
Kathy's like,
That's weird.
what?
Who was your instructor?
Bananas? That's not even a word. Student nurse is like, well, it's a fruit tray, right?
No. Oh my gosh.
She saw the initials NPO, did not understand they came from Latin, tried to work it out in English, and came up with that. Didn't run it by a nurse, didn't run it by her instructor, she just made something up. So let's play this out. Now we've got a patient who isn't getting a procedure that they need. We've got a surgeon downstairs ready to do a procedure and no patient, unproductive, unbillable time. And we've got Kathy who is stuck in the middle going, oh crap, I gotta go tell this doctor now that the procedure has been scrubbed because of an idiot student nurse.
Imagine what he was saying. Oh my gosh.
That's just.
Don't make stuff up. Uncle Google is your friend if you have no others.
You're out.
Yes, you're out.
That's crazy.
Unbelievable.
That's the first things you learn.
But not only that, if you didn't know, you're supposed to ask anyway.
Yes.
Go to somebody and be like, hey, I don't really know what this means. Can you just tell
I
me?
don't remember.
Yeah, something. That is right there. That is professional integrity. To admit that you don't know something, even if it makes you feel inferior or stupid or whatever it is that you're going to feel, that has nothing to do, your feelings have nothing to do with how this patient is going to be cared for. Get over that. Ask for help. Nanas, not even a word. So every time I see NPO now, I automatically think bananas, pineapples, and oranges.
Not me.
Question for you, Miss Patty here.
Yes. Can you give them water or soap when feeding them? I want to know.
Soup. It's gotta be soup.
Yeah, that's what I was
Has
thinking
to.
too.
It's gotta be
Or
soup.
wash their hands with soap and water. I'm not real sure where you're going with that, Betty. A little more context would be helpful, but let me answer both. Okay. So washing the patient's hands with soap and water, perfectly okay. That's fine. Whatever the patient, whatever's on the care plan or whatever the patient prefers, that doesn't matter. For the test, we're going to use a hand wipe because it's there, it's helpful, it's handy, it's whatever. As far as soup, if that's what you're asking here.
No, I think she was referring to the hand washing, which you were just referring to,
Okay.
saying instead of hand sanitizer, can we give them soap and water and wash their hands that way?
You can. It's perfectly okay. For the test, remember those evaluators want to be home in their pools, drinking their margaritas. Don't go through all that. Give me a hand wipe. But I do want to talk about that. As far as soup goes, thin liquids, that's going to depend completely on the care plan for that patient. If they have a swallowing difficulty, we may have to thicken their liquids. That's a possibility. And that's something CNAs can do. You have to be trained, obviously. because remember, we don't do anything if we're not trained. You have to be trained, but it's literally a can, and you put a scoop in the liquid. A scoop from the can into the liquid, mix it up, becomes thick. There's 3 different consistencies, and chapter 8 that you're going to be reading over the weekend is going to talk about this. It's called thicket. There's 3 different consistencies. There's nectar thick, which is just a little thick. There's honey thick, which is thick. And then there's custard thick, which is, it makes that liquid more like pudding. Talk about thick. It's not supposed to alter the taste, but it definitely alters the texture. And when you drink water, you expect water to have a specific texture. And when it doesn't have that texture, you're less likely to drink it because it just, you're not supposed to chew your water. You're just not supposed to. So a lot of patients that have to have their liquids thickened, you're really going to have to work hard to prevent dehydration in those patients because they're just not going to want that texture.
So question, you said it was like a powder. Where I used to work, it was like a dispenser box that we had. It was already prepared. You just poured it in.
That's good. Yeah, that's helpful. They've already reconstituted it for you. You can actually get this, believe it or not. This is over the counter. You can go to any drugstore and pick up a can of this to play around with it. Yeah, it's pretty cool. But just follow the directions on the can, how many scoops you need. The rest of these, you do want to be familiar with, but I want to go way up here and talk about the BIVs and TIVs. Again, this is abbreviated Latin. And if you understand that, this makes a little more sense. B stands for bi. How many wheels does a bicycle have? 2. So B by 2. BID is 2 times in a day. What do you think TID might stand for? T is for try. 3. Makes sense, right? When you see the letter Q, Q means every. So if you see the letter Q, it always means every. Except for one instance. Remember BID and TID? BID was by, TID was try. Well, we used to have a QID. Q was for quad. How many, what do you think that meant? 4 times a day, right? But Q actually means every in every other instance. So you may still see on occasion a QID. Old nurses like me still use it 4 times a day. You're not supposed to. It's no longer approved. Q means every. So instead of QID, which is 4 times a day, that turns out to be every 6 hours. So instead of using QID, we would now use Q6H. Every 6, what do you think the H stands for? Hours. Right. So QH would be every hour. Q2H, every 2 hours. Good? And then we get down to the one that throws us completely off track. QHS. What in the world does this mean? So again, this is abbreviated Latin. You have to know how to speak Latin to understand this, and I don't speak Latin. It is every hour of sleep, roughly translated. That's how we say bedtime. So QHS is at bedtime. I think it's like orosomnia or something like that, but that just means when you go to sleep. QHS is bedtime. Mm-hmm. Good? Mm-hmm. Make sense?
Yeah.
All right, so you just want to kind of look through this. Most of it, now that you know how to decode it, becomes pretty simple, but you may have 1 or 2 medical abbreviations on the test. Now, if you look at page 133, I've given you a whole worksheet there that will have you put these medical abbreviations into practice. This is a great worksheet for you to see how these abbreviations are going to be used. So you may have 1 or 2 on the state exam. Usually NPO is the one that they're looking that they focus on. Bananas, pineapples, and oranges. All right, so we have a form called an intake and output form. If your patient is on I's and O's, or intake and output, that means we're measuring what's going in, we're measuring what's coming out. You would have a documentation form that you would write that in on. So on page 169, you see an intake and output form. Up at the top is where we put intake if we're measuring it. Then we have a section for output. Don't get those two confused. If you're documenting urine that's coming out of the body, don't put it in intake. Remember, these are legal forms. If this goes into a courtroom, some lawyer is going to have you on the stand justifying why you are telling him that this patient drank urine. And that's exactly what they look at. That's how they do. If it's on this form, it happened. It is very important. So that lawyer has zero sense of humor. Make sure you get that right. I have a whole lesson here on page 107 on intake and output. You can read through that, but it's just measuring what goes in, measuring what comes out. You won't have to do this with every patient. How would we know which patients require intake and output measurements? Care plan. Do you remember me telling you on day one, like in the first hour, that you now had all the information you needed to pass the state exam? Do you remember me saying that? And you're rolling your eyes going, no way. That's, I got 4 weeks here. There's way more to learn. And yes, we have learned a lot. Absolutely. But when we boil it all down, everything you need to know is on the care plan, which we went over in hour 1. We don't do it. Yeah, it's that simple. So I've taught you a lot since then, yes. And it's all important information, yes. But when you get down to foundations, it's the care plan. All right, so let's watch the video for feeding. This takes like 3.5 minutes. Super quick, super easy. And Jake's going to put that on. All right. Hold up, guys, online. I'm going to fix this for you. Give me a second. Flip that around to me, please. Thank you. Come back here and
Hello?
Hi, Mr. Jones. My name is Patty. I'm your CNA today. Would you like a snack?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'm going to go wash my hands, get my supplies, and I'll be right back. Can I ask you to sit up straight for me, please?
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Jones, let me get you a hand wipe so that you can wipe your hands. Would you like to take that? Thank you very much. Let me dispose of this. Okay, can I offer you a clothing protector?
Yes, please.
I'll just place this on your chest. Okay, it looks like we have pudding. How does that sound?
Great.
Very good. Can I offer you a drink before we get started?
Please. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, are you ready?
Yes.
There you go. Do you have any plans for this afternoon?
No, I do not.
They're showing a movie on the big screen in the activity room. Would you like me to get more information on that for you?
Yes, please.
Okay. How does the pudding taste?
Delicious.
Very good. Ready for another?
Yes, please.
Okay. Can I offer you a drink? Would you like something to drink?
Yes, please.
All right. Ready for another bite?
Yes, please.
Ready for another bite?
I'm actually full.
Are you sure you wouldn't like just one more bite?
I'm okay, thank you.
Can I get you something else from the kitchen?
No, thank you.
Okay. Let me know if you get hungry later, and we'll get something to eat. We do have food available on the unit.
Thank you.
Going to take the napkin. There we go. I'll remove this clothing protector from you, and we're going to put this in dirty linen. I'm going to go take care of your tray. I'll be right back.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to place the tray back on your table. Is there anything else I can get for you? A magazine, perhaps?
No, thank you.
Your call light is within reach. Please let me know if you should need anything. I'm going to go wash my hands and document.
Okay, thank you.
After washing my hands, I'm going to document the amount of food that this patient ate. Using my documentation form, I'll review the steps of my skill, make any corrections, and tell the evaluator my skill is done.
Lights coming on?
All right. Questions?
No, Miss Hyde.
What?
Are they the same people in the video? Like, is he the same person?
No, actually,
That's
close
my older
though.
brother.
That's his older brother. Yeah,
I didn't think it was him, but
yeah,
You see,
yeah. We are truly a family affair.
good. Yes, that's part.
Yeah. So my oldest son has always been Mr. Jones. He's actually got a fan page on one of the social media platforms. Jake helps me. He managed the store. He does all of my shipping. He runs my shipping department because we sell all these products and ship them out schools.
Is the
and
scrub store actually closed now?
closed permanently, all gone. Yeah. A lot of reasons, but the main one was that we'd been there 17 years, and the landlord decided not to renew us and only gave us 30 days notice.
Wow.
Yeah, there was no way I could find another place, set it up, and move all the
I was
inventory.
asking because I was looking for more, and my mom was like, "Well, how about where you go to school?" I said, "I think that's actually close because my mom used to get her scrubs from you." And she's like, "I guess we're going to Newport Richie."
Yeah, I know, we were the only ones in the county. It was horrible, but that's okay. It gives me, I'm actually relieved because it gives me so much more time to focus on, and this is where my heart is. This is what I love to do. So it gives me more time to focus on this. So I'm okay with it. But yeah, I wear scrubs too. So I got to go somewhere else to get mine too. This affected me. All right. So any questions on that one? Good. Okay. Now we're going to switch gears to Peri-care. This is the last skill that we're going to learn today. There's not much to learn with Peri-care. You know the steps already. We're washing a wet body opening, so we're going to use those leaves that we learned for partial bed bath. Other than that, all the same rules apply. There's nothing new to learn here, except this isn't for the skill itself. This is for CNA knowledge. We have to understand a little bit about what incontinence is, what's happening in the body, to understand how to truly care for somebody who's incontinent. So that's what we're going to focus on now, is learning about the urinary system and what incontinence is. So we're going to go to page 153. At the top of the page, we have our care plan. The care plan tells us the female patient has been incontinent of urine and needs perineal care. the pad under the resident is wet, but the hospital gown and bedding is dry. That's a miracle. It will never happen that way in real life, but we're going to take the gift that the test gives us here. This is a mannequin skill. So if you go back a page, page 152, at the bottom of the page, you'll see that this is going to be done on a testing mannequin. Bless you.
Thank you.
So what is incontinence? Incontinence is the inability to control urine and or feces. You can have urinary incontinence, you can have bowel incontinence, and you can have both. But it's the inability to control one or both. So let's explain how that happens in the body. So if you look here, you've got two kidneys. They're way up here in your back area. Those kidneys filter blood and they pull out bad stuff, waste products. And it makes urine out of this waste product, right? So your kidneys are constantly 24 hours a day, never ever stops, filters the blood, produces urine. Now those drips of urine go down tubes called ureters. So kidneys work 24 hours a day, makes urine, the urine drips down tubes, and it collects in a bag called a bladder. That's all the bladder is. It's nothing more than a Ziploc bag. You know, it just kind of sits there, holds the urine, and at the very bottom of the bladder is a valve. That valve, right now in you guys, is closed. That valve is what allows urine to accumulate in your bladder. Eventually, the bladder gets full. Your bladder rings a bell in the brain, says, hey, we got to pee. Your body finds a bathroom, and then that valve opens. And when the valve opens, the urine comes out. When you're done, the valve closes again, and now you're ready to accumulate urine for the next 6, 8, 12 hours, however long your bladder holds urine. I don't have a good long camel bladder. My best friend does. She can go like 12 hours. Makes me sick. I'm going, pull over. Okay, so what changes during incontinence? Well, the kidneys still filter blood 24 hours a day. Still produces urine. This doesn't change. Those drips of urine still fall down ureters. They still go into the bladder. None of that changes. What happens with incontinence is this little guy right here, this valve. That is what's not working. Just the valve. The rest of this is working fine. It's the valve. Now, remember, our kidneys filter blood and produce drips of urine 24 hours a day. If that valve does not hold those drips in the body, that means they're going to come out. So when we have a patient who is truly incontinent, they're going to be wet all the time. Drip, 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 drip. As the urine is created by the kidneys, it's going to go right out of the body. Drip, drip, drip. Now, if you are working in a facility and you're caring for a patient and they're dry, 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 really, really wet, that patient is not incontinent. That valve was holding the urine the whole time. What you have, not an incontinent patient. You have incompetent staff members who aren't getting the patient to the bathroom. Do you see the difference? Mm-hmm. So if you're told that your patient is incontinent and you go in to check on them and they're dry, they're not incontinent. Do you see the difference there? Mm-hmm. Why am I harping on this? Why am I making this such a big deal? Because there are staff members out there that you are going to work with who feel it's easier for them to not get the patient up and out of bed and to the bathroom and they will tell the patient, just go and I'll clean you up. That's a dignity issue. Nobody wants to just go. Nobody wants to have somebody else clean them up. Yes, that is a dignity issue. And the agency that we talked about earlier that oversees all healthcare establishments knows that this is a problem, that there are lazy staff members that would rather not take patients to the bathroom. So again, how do you get the attention? You hit their checkbooks. So the rule is that if somebody comes into a facility and they're continent, they're able to hold their urine. And sometime during their stay at the facility, they become incontinent without a valid medical reason for that to happen. They know that that was a staff problem, not a patient problem. And they fine the facility, and I think it's somewhere around $10,000 per occurrence.
And they don't hire any extra CNAs either.
Nope, they do not.
So CNAs become lazy and
That's what
start to
right
take
now
care.
Evergreen with their nighttime CNAs, they only have one nighttime CNA because everybody is working.
Oh my
They're
gosh.
in need of nighttime CNAs right now so bad.
Wow.
And they're trying to get the daytime CNAs to work night shifts, but they won't do it. Because those CNAs at Evergreen, because my mom used to work there before Tarpon Spring, they're all young. They're super young, so nighttime is their party time. So they don't like doing it. And they said there's one CNA when my mom did work there. It was a daytime CNA, but they needed a nighttime CNA. I'm like, hey, can you work tonight? No, I'm going out with my friends. We'll be in Tampa. I'm sorry. Okay.
Is it 12-hour shift?
No.
I think they're aides. Yeah.
Yeah.
Aides. In all fairness to both sides here, a facility having trouble staffing, yes, you can be asked, you can be incentivized, they can throw you a little extra money to take on that shift. That's fine. But that's really a facility problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
You deserve your time off. You deserve to have fun on your time or do whatever it is that you want to do on your time off. And a facility trying to guilt you into working is a little, icky, in my opinion. Now, on the other side of it, you do have very conscientious workers that take responsibility for the patients and want to help, not the facility, want to be there for the patients. And the facility will absolutely take advantage of that. They will work you into the ground. So remember that as big of a heart as you have, and I love that. Oh my gosh, I love that. We need more CNAs like that. But you have to know your boundaries and you have to be willing to stand up for them, because people that have no boundaries will get taken by other people. So there's good and bad on both of those sides, but that is a facility problem, and maybe the facility needs to look at supporting their staff a little bit better. And then they wouldn't have the staffing issues that they have. Which goes right back to what we were talking about this morning. So incontinent means the valve doesn't work. So that means this patient's gonna be wet all the time. So let me tell you a really bad story. This is horrible. You need to know this. You need to know that your patients, if they're incontinent, are going to be always wet. Now there's positioning here as well. When the patient's laying on their back, a little bit of urine is going to kind of lay on the bottom of that bladder. What do you think is going to happen when you turn them on their side? Yeah, it's going to tinkle out. Absolutely. Absolutely. Because they have no valve to keep it in there. So positioning is going to play a part in this, right? Make sense? Good. About 6 or so years ago, slightly south of us, I don't know whether it was Clearwater or Sarasota, but somewhere in that area, there was a male caregiver who beat a woman patient to death for urinating on him when he turned her over. He saw it as a sign of disrespect.
Psych-evaluation.
No words. This is why I explained to you that when a patient, and I'm not really telling you guys, I know you guys are all smarter than the average bear. I'm talking to all the other people that might come across this video at some point in their training. Incontinent patients are always wet, and it's positional. So when you turn them or you get them out of bed or you move them in any way, urine is going to come out. Not a sign of disrespect. Do not beat your patients.
No.
That's what incontinence is. Crazy that I have to say that. Now, we don't call them diapers. We do not call them diapers. We call them adult briefs, or depends, either way. But we don't call them diapers. These are not babies. But let me explain to you, there's another difference here that's way more important than that, than words. Babies and adults are not the same. Not the same. The urine that a baby produces is very mild. Very pH mild. The acidity in your urine is based, remember your kidneys filter out blood and remove impurities, right? Well, part of the kidney's job is to maintain acid-base balance in your body. So it gets rid of excess acid in the form of urine. We have heard uric acid before, right? So it gets rid of acid from your body through the urine. Well, the acid that's in your body is largely based on what you eat and drink. Adult diet, very acidic. I mean, we eat a lot of acid, a lot, because it's good. A lot of acid. So all of that acid is going to come out through the urine. Now, babies, they don't eat a lot of acid. Baby diets are very bland. You know, milk, formula, rice cereal, pureed plums, right? That not a lot of acid.
When babies have diaper rash, we put them in dilute apple cider vinegar.
Right, because it helps, yeah. So the acid that comes out of a baby, very little, which means their urine very mild. You can put a diaper on a baby, put them to bed, wake them up 8 hours later, and they still have skin on their tushes because the urine is not acidic. You cannot do that with adults. Their urine is acidic. That means that we can't put an adult brief on a patient and let them lay in it all night. Remember, this urine is going to come out drip, drip, drip constantly. So you can't just put them in an adult brief and leave them overnight. We are going to clean and change them every 2 hours around the clock.
I like that you explained that.
Every 2 hours around the clock. So we're going to take off that old brief. We're going to clean the skin really well. We got to get that acid off of the skin. And then we'll put a new brief on them. Now, when the patient is out of bed, briefs are definitely indicated because nobody wants to wet themselves in public. It's an embarrassment issue, right? So dignity, out of bed in a brief. No questions asked. But we have to think about the inside of that brief for a second. It's going to hold in body heat. It's going to block out light. And we already have moisture from the urine. So we have warm, dark, moist. What do we know grows there? Pathogens, all of them. So when you have an incontinent patient in an adult brief all the time, we end up with a lot more skin issues and infections. Again, we're going to go by our care plan for each patient because not all patients are comfortable with this. But if I have a patient that is comfortable, when they're in bed, we leave them open to air on a pad. That allows light and air to circulate, cuts down on skin issues and infections. It's better overall for the health of the patient. Now, not all patients are going to be okay with that. Some patients are like, no, I need undergarments on, thank you very much. And that's fine. We're still going to do really good cleaning and change them every 2 hours. But if we can have them open to air, it's best all the way around. Now, how do we know which patients will be open to air and which patients will be in a brief all the time? The care plan. The method is already there for us. So some incontinent adults will be open to air, and this reduces skin issues, but this means that they're laying on a pad, and that's how this skill is actually set up. We have a mannequin laying on a pad that we're pretending is wet. It's not really wet. We're going to pretend it's wet. And our care plan told us that the bedding and the gown is dry. That's a miracle, but we're going to take it. So I want to think about that pad for a second. I want to think about that pad for a second. So urine, when it comes out of the body, is pretty warm. Do you guys remember what normal body temperature was? Yeah, right around 98.6, right? It's actually kind of a range, 97.6 to 99.6, somewhere in that range. Let's just call it 98, just to be easy, right? So 98 degrees. Well, urine is actually made and stored in your body's furnace area. So urine, when it comes out of the body, is a couple of degrees warmer than body temperature. It's somewhere around 100, 101 degrees. So that's really warm. Do you guys remember what I said about room temperature? It always wins. So if we have a pad and we have 100-degree temperature spreading out on that pad, and it's going to come into contact with room air, which is around 75, let's just say, let's make it warm even, 75 degrees. That urine is going to cool down rapidly because it's spread out. What do you think that pad's going to feel like to the patient? Cold, wet, slimy, soggy, icky. If you were laying on that pad, what's the first thing you would want done? Change the pad. So we're going to change that pad and get them on a dry pad right away. But now we got a wet butt on a dry pad. So it's going to make the pad not so clean. So we're going to change the pad, clean the patient, and then at the very end, we're going to change the pad again. So we've got a clean butt on a clean dry pad for the next 2 hours. Remember, we do this every 2 hours around the clock. But do you guys understand why we want to change that pad first? And why we have to change it again at the end? Good? Now you can get away with a shortcut here, not for the test though. For the test, you're going to do just like I told you. Change the pad, clean the patient, change the pad. Test. But in a clinical setting, there's a way around this that I like much better. When you change the pad the first time, put a towel on top of it. So now the pad stays dry and clean. We clean the patient. The towel absorbs any moisture from cleaning the patient. And then we take the towel away. And we got a clean pad under a clean butt. And everybody's happy and we're not going through chucks. But for the test, we're going to go through chucks.
They're hard to find anyway.
Yeah, I know. So our washing rules are going to apply here. We already know this. We've learned these. We've gone over them a mazillion times here. Don't add soap to your basin. You're going to use paper towel to turn the faucet on. Water should be warm, not hot, not cold. You're going to have the patient check the water temperature. We're going to use the leaves method. It's wet body opening. So one leaf for the middle, fold it over, one leaf, one. So I'm going to show you that in just a minute. We'll change that water if it gets cold or soapy. You've got 17 minutes, or 17? It is 17 minutes to do the skill. That water can get cold in 17 minutes for sure. So you want to kind of pay attention to that water. It doesn't take 17 minutes to do the skill. You can get it done in like 6, maybe 8, but pay attention. If you're going really slow on this skill, pay attention to that water. The evaluators are. for sure. Whatever you wash, you rinse. Whatever you rinse, you dry. Don't get your surface wet. That's why we're going to change that pad out again. And no lotion is required for this one. So here's the steps for washing rules. We're going to go through these. Don't add water or don't add soap. Get a paper towel. Check the water. Patient checks it too. Change it if it gets cold or soapy. Leaves method. Wash, rinse, dry. Let's talk about that leaves method now. I know all that. Okay, so let's talk. Hold on. I don't know why I put so many slides in here. Okay, let's talk about this. So this is cleaning the peri area. When we clean the peri area, and this is a female skill because our care plan told us it's a female skill. I have instructions on male peri-care in the step-by-step instructions at the end. You can read that. Male peri-care, you just wash what you see. It's pretty easy. Move away from the urethra. But female, there's a much higher rate of infection, and that's because your urethra, the tube that goes from the bladder to the outside body, is only about as long as your pinky. That's not far for bacteria to travel. That's like a day trip. That's easy. So we have some white blood cells that kind of hang out in the urethra. And when a bacteria shows up, the white blood cells get rid of it. They're like bouncers. They just get rid of the bacteria. And that works as long as the bacteria aren't showing up by the bus loads. So the way we wipe here is going to matter. There is bacteria down here in the rectal region. We don't want to bring that bacteria up to the urethra because your white blood cells may not be able to get rid of those invaders. So this is one direction only. We're going to go down the center. So let me get my washcloth here to show you. So I have a washcloth. I'm going to hold it in my hand using that leaves method. So one corner tucked, the other corner tucked, and I'm going to soak 5 leaves. So I'll put soap here, put soap here, put soap here, put soap here, and I'm going to put soap on the back too. And I'm going to take this washcloth and I'm going to go down the middle. Now I need to hold her open just a little bit to do that. Not far, but just a little bit to get down the inside. So I'm going to go top to bottom, pull out, and then fold over. I'm going to go top to bottom down the outside on one side, fold over. Top to bottom on the other side, fold over. Now this one's going to go right here. Between the leg and the groin is a crease, a fold. So we're going to go down that crease, fold this over, and down that crease. Never go back up. That's the one thing they're looking for in this skill. That is the important checkpoint. If you do this, that's what they're looking for. Okay? This isn't a hard skill as long as you know what they're looking for. So one direction only. Whenever we wash, we rinse. So we're going to rinse the exact same way, no changes. And then we're going to dry, again, top to bottom. Once you get to the bottom, no more. Good? Yeah. We're going to unroll that gown. Now, when we do this, when we put the privacy blanket on and we're ready to expose the patient, I did kind of skip through that. Hold on, let me see if I can find it. Okay. When we put the privacy blanket on and we're getting ready to expose the patient, we're going to roll that blanket under to expose them. Don't just pull it up. That's uncomfortable for the patient. We're going to roll it under. And when we do that, we're rolling the gown with the blanket. And we're going to put a towel over the legs. So the only area that's exposed is the area we're working on. It protects privacy as much as possible. It's a little different just to whip the gown and, up and have the patient all out and exposed and uncomfortable. Remember, they are in a vulnerable position laying down. So we're going to roll that blanket. Well, at the end of the skill, when we're all done, we're going to unroll that blanket to cover the patient back up. And that unrolls that gown. So you're not touching that gown with the gloves that have been all up in her business. Good? So that takes care of the front. But that doesn't do anything for her backside. She's been laying on that wet pad. So we have to remember for this skill, it's not just about cleaning the front. It's also about cleaning the backside. So we're going to scoot her toward us. We already know how to do that. And roll her up on her side. And then we're going to clean the backside. So I'm going to take my washcloth, put it in my hand with the free leaves facing up, tuck the corners, and I'm going to spray 4 leaves. So 1, fold it, 2, 3, 4. And then I'm going to clean the backside. So I'm going to take that washcloth, start at the anal opening, and go up the center crease. It's like a riverbed. That's where a lot of the urine is going to be. I'm going to fold that over. I'm going to clean one buttocks or cheek, fold that over, clean the other cheek, fold that over, and then I'm going to go once more up the center crease just to get anything that might be there. What they're looking for here, don't do that. One direction. Of course, whatever we wash,
We rinse.
we rinse the exact same way. Whatever we rinse, we dry the exact same way. Nothing really to learn here. And then we'll change that pad out. How do you change a pad? Well, we know that too. Clean rolls toward me, dirty rolls away. So do you see what I mean by you know everything you need to know to do this skill? Okay, you're going to return the patient to the center of the bed, covered with a privacy blanket, on the clean pad, ready to go. But we can't pull that sheet up yet. We have to put all of our dirty linen away, and we know where that linen has been, so we have to have gloves on to get rid of all of that dirty linen. So we're going to dispose of our supplies, clean our basin, store it. So we're going to put all of our dirty linens away, clean our basin, and store it. Then we can remove our gloves. After we remove our gloves, then we can take the privacy blanket off by pulling the sheet up. Then we'll just do our closing like we do everything else. Good? Questions?
We are using water and soap.
Yeah, real water, real soap.
And if, say, someone's taking a little too long, do you just say you're gonna change the water or just go do it?
Yeah, just I always tell my patients, yeah. Hey, water's getting a little cold. Let me go change it. Let me go warm it up. You can touch the faucet with your gloves. Gloves are dirty. Faucet is dirty. But do you think we should use those gloves on the patient once they touch the faucet?
No.
So what could we use between our gloves and the faucet?
Paper towel.
Paper towel. Good? Questions? Let me show you this video. It's a little bit longer. I think the video on this one takes, 7 minutes. But you have like 17 to do the skill. Hi, Miss Jones. My name is Patty. I'm your CNA today. How are you? Wonderful. I need to do Peri-care. Is that okay? Okay, let me close your curtain, wash my hands, get my supplies, and I'll be right back. Okay, I'm going to start out with a barrier. This gives me a clean place to place my clean supplies. So I'll place the barrier on the overbed table. And now I'll start gathering my supplies. I'm going to need 2 chucks, 4 washcloths, a privacy blanket, a towel. I'll place these items on the overbed table. I'll need a basin and soap. And I'm going to need a set of gloves. Okay, Miss Jones, let me go fill the basin. I'll use a paper towel to turn the water on. I'll make sure it's warm. Not hot, not cold, just warm. Miss Jones, would you like to check the water temperature and make sure it's okay? It's good? Good. I'll place my washcloths in the water. Okay, Miss Jones, I'm going to place this privacy blanket over you. This is going to help keep you warm and protect your privacy while we do this skill. I'm going to spread the blanket out, being careful not to shake it or snap it. And then I'm going to pull your sheet down to about your knees. Now I'll get my chucks ready for use. I'm going to unfold the chucks, hold it up lengthwise, and roll it toward me. And I'll repeat that with the second one. Clean rolls toward me, dirty rolls away. Now I'll get my gloves on. Okay, Miss Jones, in just a moment, I'm going to ask you to scoot toward me, and we're going to roll you onto your left side so I can change the chucks that's under you. I'll place one of the chucks on the bed. Miss Jones, can you scoot toward me, please? Thank you. And roll up on your left side. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to roll the dirty chucks toward the patient. Tuck it under her hip. Unroll the clean one and tuck it under the soiled. Miss Jones, can you roll back onto your back, please? Thank you. And scoot to the middle of the bed. Okay, I'll come around to the other side of the bed now. Miss Jones, can you scoot toward me, please? And roll up on your right side. 1, 2, 3. We'll remove the soiled chucks from the bed and unroll the clean one. This is going to be thrown away. Okay, Miss Jones, we're going to start cleaning now. I'm going to roll your blanket up to about your waist. This is going to expose you. Please let me know if you're uncomfortable in any way. So I'll roll the blanket up, and on the way I'm going to try to get that gown rolled inside the blanket so that exposes only the peri area. I'll cover her upper legs with a towel, and then get my first washcloth. I'm going to wring this out and soak 5 corners. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, Miss Jones, I'm going to clean now. I'll use the heel of my hand at the top of her peri area and my index and middle finger to spread her slightly open so I can clean down the inside middle, top to bottom, and then we'll fold that leaf over. We're going to clean the outside labia, top to bottom, down one side, and fold that over. The third leaf will clean the other side of the labia, top to bottom, fold that leaf over. The fourth leaf is going to clean this area between the leg and the groin, this skin fold, top to bottom. We're going to fold that over, and we'll repeat it on this side, top to bottom. Now we'll place the washcloth back on the barrier. The second washcloth, we're going to wring out, and we're going to rinse all of those areas the same way we washed. So we're going to hold her slightly open to clean down the middle, top to bottom. Fold that over. We're going to rinse down one side of the labia, top to bottom. Fold that over. Rinse the other side of the labia, top to bottom. Fold that over. We're going to rinse the skin fold down one side, top to bottom. Fold that over. And the other skin fold, top to bottom. We'll set that aside. Now we're going to dry all of those areas using short, soft strokes or a gentle pat. I'm going to unroll the blanket, which will place her gown back over her legs. Okay, Mrs. Jones, I'm going to scoot you toward me now, and we're going to roll you onto your left side so I can clean your back side. Go ahead and scoot toward me, and we're going to roll you over onto your left side. 1, 2, 3. The evaluator will hold the mannequin in place for you to complete your cleaning of the patient's backside. Okay, I'm going to take the 4th washcloth, wring it out really well, and we're going to soap 4 corners. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to start at the anal opening and go up the center crease, right up the middle, and we'll fold that leaf over. The second leaf will clean one buttocks. We're going to fold that over. The third leaf will clean the other side of the buttocks. We'll fold that leaf over. And the fourth leaf will clean from the anal opening up the center crease one last time. We're going to set that aside. Whatever we wash, we rinse. So I'll wring that out. And I'm going to rinse the same way we washed. So from the anal opening up the center crease, fold that over. One buttocks, fold that over. The other side of the buttocks, fold that over. And once more up the center crease. And then we'll dry all of those areas. Okay, Ms. Jones, I'm going to change that pad out from under you so you're on a nice clean pad. We'll roll the soiled chucks toward the patient and tuck it under her hip. Unroll the clean chucks and tuck it under the soiled. Ms. Jones, come on back, please. And scoot to the middle. Thank you. Okay, Ms. Jones, go ahead and scoot toward me. And roll up on your right side. 1, 2, 3. Thank you. We'll remove the soiled chucks from the bed and unroll the clean. Okay. Go ahead and scoot back to the middle, please. This is going to be thrown away. Okay, Ms. Jones, I need to put all of my soiled items away and clean my basin. I'll be back in just a moment to get you situated. These items will go in dirty linen. And the basin is going to be cleaned the same way we clean everything else. We'll dump the water into the sink. Rinse the basin. Pick it up with a paper towel and dry the inside. We'll discard that paper towel. We'll dry the outside and discard that paper towel. And then we'll get the soap. I'll use the paper towel to open the drawer and store the basin back inside. These paper towels will now be thrown away. The barrier is going to be disposed of. And now I can remove my gloves. Okay, Ms. Jones, I'm now going to gather the privacy blanket up and pull your sheet back up. So I'll collect the privacy blanket by lifting from the bottom or underside of the blanket. I'm going to pull the sheet up and ball the blanket up into a ball. That way no trailing edges will contaminate other surfaces. Okay, Ms. Jones, let me go put this in dirty linen. Are you comfortable? Is there anything else I can get for you while I'm here, like a magazine? Okay, here's your call light. If you should need anything at all, please let me know. I'm going to go open your curtain and wash my hands. After washing my hands, I'll think about the steps of my skill, make any corrections, and then let the evaluator know my skill is done. Jake, can you put those 2 comments up, please?
Yes, ma'am. The other ones. This one?
Yes. Deja says, I want to thank you so much. I passed my exam today and I heard your voice when I took the exam. Again, thank you. Congratulations to you. That is awesome. And then we had another one a little earlier today that I want to congratulate. So this is Mud Gator. Miss Patty watched all 8 videos to complete the material, took the prometric practice test online last week, and yesterday I passed both exams. Thanks to you, and now I'm a CNA. Unfortunately, the other students who did not take your lessons and used other websites didn't pass. I told them about your classes and told them if you want to pass, start watching only you. For Florida, now we get the scores on the bottom, and I only missed 1 on the written test. So congratulations, Mud Gator. Great job. Congratulations. Okay, you can pull that down. All right, so any questions on what you've gone over so far? We only have 3 skills left to go. That's it. Catheter care is a variation of Peri-care. It's Peri-care plus a step. That one's easy. Emptying the drainage bag is a short skill. We'll learn how to do that. And then we have 1 more range of motion to learn, elbow and wrist, which takes like 2 minutes. So you'll have some practice time in class on Monday as well. So the rest of the class today is simply practice. I know I kind of went off on a rant this morning. I'm sorry, I took 15 minutes of your practice time. But you have 45 minutes of practice today, and you should have about 1.5 hours of practice on Monday as well. So we'll go ahead and sign off. Remember that you do have 2 chapters of homework over the weekend. You have 8 and 9. 8 is on nutrition. The diets are a little challenging. Make some flashcards. I think there's only 8 diets that you need to learn. And 9 is on rehabilitation. So adaptive aids and things like that. Jake's going to hand out your review sheets. If I get out of his way. Nope, don't pay attention to that. That's not, I got to take that slide down. A couple of you, I gave the link to, I sent the link to for the CPR. You guys, if you give me your cell phone numbers after we're done live, give me your cell phone numbers and I'll text you the link to register for the CPR at a discounted rate. Okay. Okay. So let's go ahead and sign off of our online viewers. Thank you guys so much. Stay tuned. I think this afternoon, hopefully if all goes well when I get home, keep my fingers crossed. This afternoon or this evening, I will be uploading the new partial bed bath video, and it has all of the checkpoints on the bottom. Super cool format. I'm really happy with the way it's coming out. So stay tuned for that. And Monday, we will have the last 3 skills. Tuesday will be the game show. So stay tuned for that as well. Until next time, happy caregiving. Bye.
Oh, one more.
Oops. Oh, Tanya, I just wanted to say thank you. I passed my test Monday. Congratulations. Oh, I love that. Yeah, when you guys pass, come back and let me know. Makes my heart super happy. All right, congratulations. We'll see you guys later. Bye.